Good evening. We thank Hingham again for broadcasting this to citizens at home. I'm Bob Curley, the chair of the Community Preservation Committee. Thank the members who are here tonight and our AdCom liaisons. I think a first order of business is approval of the minutes from our last meeting. I know I read them over and gave Carol some edits that have been incorporated. I hope everyone else has had a chance to read them. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of November 12th, 2014.
Mr. Watson seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Good. And we were going to review our CPA financials. Carol has given us an updated spreadsheet. I did hear today that the governor had just cut like $200 million from the state budget and was because of unexpected expenditures.
Act 90 emergency reductions? I mean, they can do that.
I only heard it on a news item.
Oh.
And so I'm hoping that is not going to affect the supplemental budget that included extra funds for the CPC communities, but I think we probably need to keep an eye on that, and hopefully the money will come in the door sooner rather than later. And I've got a few updates on things, but I can save those till the end. And I think we will start with our evening presentations. We've got a pretty full evening. We would request that people that are proponents that are making presentations tonight would try to limit their comments to maybe 8 to 10 minutes to allow some room for questioning and comments by members of the Community Preservation Commission with the objective of trying to keep presentations limited to about 15 minutes each. So with that, we have the tree and park barn restoration as our first order of business tonight. Are you presenting, Betty?
I am.
And is Mr. Orr also assisting? Wherever you're more comfortable. We've got extra seats tonight, extra mics tonight, so.
That's it here. Sounds good to me.
And,
Thank you.
Thank you. The project we're presenting to CPC is a window restoration project in the tree and park barn. The approximate total cost of the project is $40,000. We're requesting $25,000. This will allow for the removal of each sash, restoration of the window, and then Mr. Orr is leveraging the project with his own labor by fixing the casings around the windows, the sills, and the spaces in between, and putting things back together. We're anxious to preserve the windows. We understand that if they're left too much longer, they're going to fall apart. This is a real concern. So far, Mr. Orr, in the time he has been there, has put on interior storms downstairs. It is his plan to put on interior storms on the upstairs windows as well after the window restoration has been done. The barn was painted with the community preservation funds last year, which we're very excited about, and I think it looks great. We've been getting a lot of good comments on how it looks, and we're anxious to preserve the building. There are some plans for getting it done. If this project is approved, we would hope to get all the work done in the first quarter of fiscal 16, because it's hoped that the barn will be on the historic house tour next year. Dick also has plans for doing some senior woodworking classes over there in cooperation with the senior center.
I'm not one of the seniors. Not yet, not quite, but.
Anything you wanted to add?
Well, I think, yes, what Betty had said is that I'd worked with Linda Kuchera, who's the window restoration specialist, and she would remove the sash, would be the process, and she would take the sash to her shop for rehabilitation, and then a number of the windows need other structural work. And what I would do is to fabricate those pieces out of the same stock, the same New England white pine for sills and parting beads and so forth. And as Linda and I would have replaced the sash, I would then repair those windows with parts as needed, so everything would be tightened back up again. My efforts here are not totally altruistic. I hope that the barn certainly needs this work. Linda indicated that some windows might last 1 more year, 2 years at the most for a great deal of them. However, from my own perspective, I hope to renew or extend my lease on the building. I have 2 more years left there, and I just felt that this effort on my part would just hold me in some good stead when it comes to renewal of the lease.
And you don't find snow blowing through the windows?
Upstairs, the snow actually comes in through the back. Doug McKeag warned me about the back windows. So.
With the arrival of the cold, self-preservation is probably in mind as well. And
most definitely, yeah.
I was perusing my copy of Hingham Through Time, a great new book by Steve Dempsey and Alec McMillan, in which the tree and park barn is prominently featured before and after. It was originally the center school. When the center school was moved to Short Street, this became the Central Fire Station, and then it became the Tree and Park Department.
And the fire department actually moved from where Jack Conway is over to the then school, which became the fire station.
To the best of our knowledge, the windows that are in there currently are the original windows that were in there at that time.
Oh, yes, on that, thank you, Betty. Linda Kuchera, the restoration specialist, had said that on the windows, as she removes the sash, those panes that are not old glass, she would replace with which are new glass, she would replace with old glass. Some of the panes have old glass, some of the panes over the years have obviously been replaced with new glass. Anyway, when they go back in, they all have old glass.
Well, that's tremendous.
So, no, it is. I mean, so you get...
It's actually something that the Secretary of the Interior's standards for historic preservation indicate should be done wherever possible. So, yeah. So you're doing it just right. Any?
I think the only thing I could add as project manager is the fact that the Tree and Park Barn is in the center of Hingham. I mean, it's obviously a town building, a historic building that is seen by everybody who comes through town. I think we're fortunate to have Dick basically steward this project forward and have the expertise. I mean, anyone who knows his work in woodworking and cabinet making can see that he's the right man for the job, and the fact that he's willing to leverage his skills to make this a doable project, to me, makes, sort of checks off every box that we look for at CPC.
And I might add that we're very confident of our numbers. We did get some quotes. Dick reached out to 3 different window restoration companies, and I ran the numbers by Roger as well, just to make sure that we had good numbers. So
it's now 40,000?
It's 40,000, but 25,000 is what we're requesting. 15,000 will be services from Dick Orr.
I have 2 questions. One, the town is a landlord and collecting rent on this.
We are.
Shouldn't some of the rental income go toward the preservation of the rental property?
As it stands right now, the rent we collect goes into the general fund. In turn, we pay certain repairs for the building. For example, there was a problem with the furnace, and the town paid for that, and that sort of thing. That's what we've been using the rent for, and the rest of it goes into the general fund.
So, none of the money being collected for rent is no one's willing to spend that on to preserve the building, using the rental income.
The rental income right now is $1,400 a month?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So it's not a large sum of money, and as I say, right now it's not going to the building, it's going into the general fund.
And the second question is, that Mr. Orr's lease is running out shortly, and is there going to be any firm consideration? I mean, it's a very generous offer to do $15,000 worth of work, but he's very much at risk because there's no renewal, I mean, there's no guarantee that he's not going to have this property taken away from him, and that
there
doesn't
is-
feel fair.
There is no guarantee under state law. When the request for proposals goes out, it will have to be a general, request for proposals to lease the property.
I mean, we've talked about that a lot, again, as the project manager on this, and one of the things I can say to that is that having the fact that it is a request for proposal, and since Dick plans to put a proposal forward again, obviously he would be the steward who could take care of a building in the kind of ways that this historic building needs, so I would think that would be in his favor, but he understands the risk.
And my wife
that's-
thinks I'm loopy. I believe that just doing this would again be in my favor when it comes for the request for proposal, assuming that does go out again. I'm just looking for ways to increase my chances for renewal.
Was any thought given to putting into the selectmen's budget for capital part of this? And that would answer Kathleen's issue about the rent. Could that be used?
Put the $25,000 to the selectmen's capital
A
budget?
portion of it.
Hadn't been discussed? Willing to consider it?
I mean, so you should look for partnerships with folks, and I mean, the town would. Again, especially where there's rent being collected, and it's to me, it's a building improvement. As a landlord, I would think that's part of a landlord's responsibility, is to keep their property in good order.
Well, I will say, to Betty's credit, not too long ago, this was actually last winter, but I had one of those no heat days in the morning, and it turns out something was broken on the burner was shot or something on a furnace. Anyway, so it was a major redo. It wasn't a whole new furnace, but it was the whole burner system. And I called and I said that it was shot, and so Betty said it was fine. So I called an oil burner servicing company, which they came in and replaced and fixed all that. And I'm sure it was a substantial amount of money, which then, of course, the town paid for. And another time, I had a broken pipe and a flood in the basement and leaking. And again, the same deal. I called Betty, and they sent over a plumber, and whatever that was, I'm sure it was substantial. It had new piping and so forth. So they've been very good stewards in that regard. So.
When is the lease up?
The lease is up in September 2016.
Any other questions or comments by members of the committee? Questions or comments by members of the public? Yes, Tom.
John Bellier.
Step up to the mic, please.
Just a few comments. Tom Bellier, Advisory Committee. Number one, last year, capital outlay was approved at town meeting to borrow $2 million of the $4 million that was appropriated, or the town was. Number two is that, I forgot what that point was. I'm going to have to go. I'll see you.
The point being that there's a lot of pressure on town budgets from a lot of different directions.
Coming to mind, capital outlay, I just suggest that capital outlay will be asking how much is community preservation kicking in. And the last year, the priorities were more urgent priorities other than historic, that capital funds were appropriated, such as very urgent repairs in the infrastructure of the town.
And my memory of the timing of the votes is that we vote on our recommendations before they do.
Yep.
Exactly.
Okay. Further comments or discussion? Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Mr. Orr. Thanks for all your great work. And we have the barn, Phase 4. Mark?
May I sit at the
Wherever you'd like.
He's circling the parking lot.
Oh, it's a lot of activity tonight.
Yes.
Yeah. The barn is also at least referred to in Hingham Through Time.
Evening.
you go.
Thank you for having me here tonight. We are extremely excited to be entering the last round of funding.
Just identify yourself for the viewing audience.
Sure. I'm Mark Thorell, Director of Hingham Recreation. Extremely excited to be entering the last round of funding for the rec barn. This project started 4 years ago, and we're really eager to finalize the rec barn project. The Rec Commission is a firm believer that historic buildings are truly only preserved if they are alive with activity. And what the Rec Commission means by that, and it points to several historic buildings in the town of Hingham, such as the Loring Hall, Wilder Memorial, Old Ordinary, St. Paul's Church, Hingham Heritage Visitor Center at Old Derby, the Old Ship Meeting House. What all these historic buildings in Hingham have in common are they flourish with activity, and therefore they're preserved and for hopefully the next 100 years. So in quick summary, the barn project, as I mentioned before, started in October of 2010. It was added to the town's historic registry in 2010 by the Historical Commission. Town meeting has approved this on 3 separate years. It's been supported by the CPC on 3 separate years. And in 2014, when we went before the planning board, it was also supported in concept by the planning board. To talk a little bit more in depth about the 3 separate years of funding, phase 1 was a feasibility study where the Rec Commission was awarded $25,000 to find out, and basically to find out whether or not the building was savable and whether or not it could be preserved for the next 100 years. Phase 2 was looked at as a stabilization phase, where the Rec Commission was awarded $252,000. And within that phase, the entire envelope of the building was structurally shored up. So the building's not going anywhere and is really stabilized to date. All that work has been complete. Phase 3, which was approved at the 2014 town meeting, was for $250,000, and this was for further infrastructure improvements. Also, it will lead to 2 public bathrooms. So sitting at the location that it is right next to the playground and all the ball fields, we will now have 2 public bathrooms there. And we will actually have a new address of 341 Main Street right beside Central Fire Station, so people will know where to go. It'll be kind of a more destination that, hey, if we're going to the soccer field or playground, that there'll be a dedicated parking lot over there and the correct address. And finally, why we're here tonight is for phase 4, which would be the creation of the multi-purpose room. And why this round is so important is because it would complete our business plan, meaning that the multi-purpose room would enable us to put some of our most popular programs over at the barn. And what this would do was, create revenue and business over at the barn, which in turn would allow us to keep the building preserved and money going back into the building and maintenance of the building over the years to come. Looking at the benefits of this multi-purpose room, there are several benefits. Most importantly, the barn location. It's located in the heart of Hingham in what I like to refer to as, in my opinion, the most diversified recreational complex in Hingham. Between the Little League baseball field, the Major League diamond, the soccer field, volleyball court, hockey rink, outdoor basketball court, tennis courts, and the largest and most used playground in Hingham. In my opinion, definitely the most used and the most diversified recreational amenity in the Hingham community. Secondly, over the last 10 years, there's always talk about the shortage of parking at Town Hall. Without a doubt, this would alleviate some of the congestion at Town Hall. We would take our most popular classes, and this congestion of parking at Town Hall seems to be the worst in the morning hours. We would take our most popular morning classes, place them at the barn, and have 15, 20 cars over at the barn with the parking lot that would be dedicated for those programs. Thirdly, with our ever-popular summer program, it provides a new and exciting option. Last summer, we enrolled, filled up 1,400 spots between our 3-year-olds and our 14-year-olds. And the space that we have now, we actually stop our adult fitness classes in the summer after 7 a.m. because we just don't have the space to cater to the kids and the adult fitness users. So it's hurt us in the past, and we've lost customers that way. This would give us the opportunity to continue our fitness classes that we run from September to the middle of June throughout the summer months, and continue to cater to our summer program. And also, the space, and we're very grateful that the space that we have in the basement at Town Hall, some of our classes are extremely popular, and this would provide a more adequate space for such classes as fitness, like yoga, or some of our popular dance classes. And if in summary, recreation programs will literally breathe life into the rec barn. Business creates revenue, which in turn leads to a capital building plan, thus preserving and maintaining the barn for the next 100 years. Currently, all recreation programs are self-sufficient. We have a proven track record of offering high-quality programs at affordable prices. And the rec barn would also be managed at no cost to the taxpayer. Our vision is to construct a multi-purpose activity room that will enable the community to benefit from all aspects of recreational activities. This project will also enhance the overall welfare of the Hingham community while providing active recreational opportunities to a wide range of Hingham residents. With the support of the Town of Hingham and the Community Preservation Committee, the rec barn will once again become a thriving staple in our community. So that pretty much sums up our presentation.
The program revenue that's referenced on your last slide, Mark?
Yeah. So those are real numbers with current programs that we offer right now.
Okay.
So I simply just looked at some of our popular dance and fitness classes that we could plug right over there. So that's not any sort of projection on what we could offer there. That's simply taking what we already do and plugging it in over there.
And has Roger looked at the plans and the numbers?
He has. So where we're at right now is the $375,000 to finish off the rec barn. Right now, that's currently a square footage estimate. We're working for several reasons with I've been working alongside Roger on this project for the last 4 years, and for several reasons, we're working with a new architectural firm for this last round, phase 4. We've met with them a couple of times. We're meeting with them again December 2nd. So as the next couple of weeks are really going to heat up, and we're really going to have a better idea of the exact design, even though we have a general layout of what the multi-purpose room would be. We're getting more information as we get into the winter months.
So was the actual project cost $375,000?
Right now, yes. Yeah.
And where's the other 25 is coming from the rec budget, or?
Do you mean the 5% contingency?
Well, aren't you asking for 350? Did it go up?
It went up from last year.
Oh, okay, I have preliminary, and, all right, fine, I was looking at the wrong column.
Yeah.
So
last year,
375
we did have 350 penciled in. As we talked about it further, we felt more comfortable at the 375 mark.
And last year, didn't you ask for some funds from capital outlay as well?
We did. It was turned down.
Are you going to be doing that this year?
We are not.
Because there's no likelihood of the funds being available?
Yeah, I don't think we exactly meet their criteria over the last several years on this project, so we figure rather than keep on asking something that's the same project that we've been turned down, that we're not going to keep on asking on the same project.
I'd just like to add, I was at the meeting the other day with the architect and the contractor, and Mark and Roger, and since Roger's not here and Gary's not here, first of all, the contractor and the architect all talked about the bones of the building, I mean, the strength of that building. Everything is in place for this to take place. Because, as you all remember last year, this project, because it couldn't be fully funded, we were asked to split it in two. And that's where we're at this point. So obviously, permitting has to go forward and find out what we need. But within the next 2 weeks, so for the next presentation, we'll have a line item accounting along with Roger to explain exactly what the funds will, where
Where
they'll
do you
go.
stand for the second phase? How much is done, and how much have you spent the money that you got last year?
Last round, there hasn't been a whole lot done in terms of construction. We're in the permitting process right now. We're scheduled for construction hopefully in this winter with the completion of the bathrooms by the end of the winter. So we'll be ready to go for the spring sports season.
So you don't know if you're going to have any extra from that? Right. When the...
But we'll
The
have a better
potential is there, right.
I think one of the concerns are when we saw the building, it seems like the funding may be running ahead of the actual construction, that, like, in other words, you have more money than you're spending right now, and are you going to be able to spend through the money that you have, plus if you get this extra money, is this just kind of building up this big pile of cash, which isn't really, in other words, you're getting the funding in sooner than you really need it?
It's actually it's one phase, and we broke it up into two because of the CPC's budget. So the way that it's kind of evolving right now could end up in our favor because the construction company will hopefully be mobilized one time.
I mean, had we been able to swallow the whole cost last year in our budget, we might have done it. We couldn't accommodate that. And so
The unfortunate thing is, for this 2,000 square feet, it's running $450 to $500 a square foot, which is pretty, for an empty room. I mean, it's pretty expensive. You know, if you take $900,000 and divide it by 2,000 square feet, this is looking.
But I think if you compare it with buildings, this is a building that will be open 7 days a week.
It's
for
an
all.
expensive building.
Well, you know,
It definitely is an expensive building, but it's expensive to preserve historic buildings. We could have put a cheaper building in that location, but no one in this, we're in the business of preserving historic buildings, which is fairly expensive.
Well, we wouldn't have been able to fund it. So I don't know I mean, had there been a proposal to build, I mean, it's originally like this, the building at the skate pond, which we couldn't have funded. I mean, if you could have done a building for $400,000, let's say, wouldn't have come out of this committee. I don't know where it would have come from. Maybe it would come from nowhere.
right.
So,
Isn't part of this funding in phase 3 and 4 for the exterior improvements as well?
Yeah, I think Gary had mentioned that when we met last, we talked about how the exterior shingles could certainly use a power washing, and then also painting of all the trim. That's not covered in the 375, but the Rec Commission talked about this at our last meeting, and we'd be able to cover that cost through the proceeds of the...
Isn't the parking included within
Yes,
phases
yes.
3 and 4? So
Yes.
it's not...
Oh, it's parking, it's
Right.
septic systems.
Drainage.
I'm sorry, what was that?
drainage.
Drainage, yeah.
I think if Roger were here, it would be easier to explain, but obviously the permitting, you can't put in septic systems without permitting pieces. And that's why this has fallen quite nicely in the fact that we looked for a new architect, because before it was historic preservation. This is now in the inside. So that's what's taken the time. But now as this process goes forward, we'll be able to permit and get it all done and keep the contractor working right through the second phase if this piece is able to be funded.
Have you started the permitting yet?
Roger has met with the building department. Beginning, right.
How many parking spots, Mark?
That hasn't been determined yet because the architect that we're working with hasn't finalized that plan, but it's coming very soon.
What's the range?
I think we're probably going to be looking at 15 to 20.
Any other comments by members of the committee? Or
No, I think it makes a lot of sense right as it is, and it accomplishes a lot with the ground floor. But I keep wondering about the second floor. Somebody said at one point, well, you couldn't put in an elevator, but if it's a very low volume and it's a straight stairway, you see these chair lifts that just go up the side of a stairway. And wouldn't that be a possibility someday to get more usable space?
To put in an elevator?
No, a chair lift.
A chair lift?
The thing on a track that goes up the side of a stairway. You see them advertised in old people's magazines.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm not sure in a public building whether or not that's sufficient or not for handicap accessibility or not.
I don't either. I'm just thinking,
it's
it's
probably
what.
an issue beyond the present proposal.
But that's my point, is that if people are worrying about the cost per foot now, it conceivably could be a lot less someday. But right now, it's worth it as it is. You've done a great job.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments by members of the public? Further discussion? Thank you, Mark. And we have the Crestfield Playground. The lost choice.
Yeah.
So our second project tonight, we're also extremely excited about. So similar to the Bradley Woods Association, the Farm Hills Association approached the Rec Commission approximately 6 months ago about installing a new playground at Crestfield. Let's see. And what I thought was interesting, looking at the Town of Hingham Open Space and Recreation Master Plan, it was noted in that plan that Crestfield is significant because it's the only substantial public recreation facility in the southwest section of Hingham. And so this is a picture that was taken this week of Crestfield. And as you can see from the picture, Crestfield is literally a dump for discarded toys.
I think it's a happy retirement home.
Maybe that's maybe a more politically correct way to phrase it, but so there's two really main points here. Is that this area of Hingham needs and really deserves a commercial playground, and secondly, and most importantly, that not only in Hingham but in surrounding towns, an underserved population is special needs, especially looking at public playgrounds. And so what we mean by that is that all public playgrounds have to be by law handicap accessible, but there's a difference between a playground being handicap accessible and then a playground that actually adds play value and is geared towards special needs children. So as you can see from the posters, and also if it's easier to see up on the computer screen, is that this playground design has many different components, which is geared towards special needs children. There are sensory boards. There are wide ramps. There are wide ramps so a wheelchair could access several different play components. There are poured-in-place rubber pathways.
You need a microphone to help my
So as you can see, there are poured-in-place rubber pathways. That's in the dark green. The brown area are the certified playground wood chips. Even though the wood chips are technically handicap accessible, over time they do decompose quite rapidly. And the poured-in-place rubber, the life expectancy is a lot longer, to 15 to 20 years. And this would allow mobility of wheelchairs to access all the play components. This seesaw piece of equipment is a full seat with back support. So if a child had lower mobility issues, they would have a lot more support and could be placed in the seat. This piece, play component right here, is an actual wheelchair swing, so that literally a wheelchair can go up the ramps and enter the swing and swing back and forth. I believe 2 wheelchairs could actually fit onto it. So as you can see, there's number of sensory boards as well, and it's not only a playground designed for special needs, but it also has a lot of typical playground components that the general population is accustomed to playing on as well. Monkey bars, the slide, the climbing contraption right here. So it really accomplishes a number of goals within this design. So in conclusion, I would just like to read part of a letter that was written by the Farm Hills Association on October 9th. The Farm Hills Civic Society, comprised of over 100 South Hingham families in the vicinity of Upper Gardner Street, is in full support of Hingham Recreation's proposal to recreate Crestfield as an inclusive playground. Our children, our friends' children, and our children from all across the South Shore deserve an up-to-date playground. We especially want to see a playground where special needs children can play safely and happily alongside their friends. We are so excited about this project and look forward to helping Hingham build its first inclusive playground. And what the Farm Hills Association did is actually have an online petition, and I believe last time I checked there were over 250 signatures on that petition from Hingham residents. I know that there are several members from the Farm Hills Association here today. There could be a couple members from the Special Needs Athletic Partnership Board here, but that's it for my presentation.
Did somebody from the association want to present as well?
Should I come up there?
Yes, please, and please identify yourself for our viewing audience.
Should I just talk into this one? So my name's
Whichever
Ted.
one you feel better with.
Okay. So my name's Ted Healy, and I'm the president of the Farm Hills Civic Society. And we've been an active group in Hingham, not only South Hingham, but all over town for since the 60s, basically. So there's been many programs our group have been involved in improving Hingham as a whole, along with South Hingham issues. Some members couldn't attend this meeting because they're down at another meeting, I think downstairs, for the South Hingham planning of the Derby Street area. So, like Mark said, about 6 months ago, I had contacted him because, like he said, we have over 100 families that are members of our Farm Hills Civic Society, and we run many community events. We run block parties. We run Easter egg hunts at Crestfield, and obviously play baseball and kickball and you name it down there. And as you could see in a couple of those first photos, it has become the land of misfit toys down at Crestfield, and especially for the neighbors that live right around there and have to look at it. That's certainly part of the reason we love to clean it up and get a upgrade in the playground. So we had met with a few folks that gave us these great plans and got feedback from some of the wonderful parents and families that make up Farm Hills, and came up with some of these ideas that you see on these plans, and we can certainly adjust them if we feel necessary. So these are kind of just base plans for you all to get an idea of what we were thinking and why we were thinking it. We do have some neighbors in our neighborhood that do have special needs or are handicapped, and this certainly would be a wonderful addition to our area, not just South Hingham, but across the whole town, that they can park there. It's a very flat area. You can bring wheelchairs right onto the facility, and it will be awesome. So we're here coming to you for your support in that. And we also wanted to let you know, just like we sent out this information to our whole email distribution of Farm Hills, where we told them what our plans were, that we had contacted the rec department and we were going to come and talk to the CPC about this program, that we started out by gaining names of support, people that lived in Farm Hills area, past, present, and future, to get their support behind it. And we're going to proceed even further with that. I mean, and I've talked to Mark quite a bit about this, because we feel that it's important that, since it's kind of in our neighborhoods, that we want to take part in the build similar to Bradley Woods has done in the past. And we've talked to the playground group that are totally for it, depending on how many days it's going to take to put it in. Then we'll have volunteers set up for 1, 2, or however many days it will take to at least get the pieces that we can help them put in. And we already have a pledge system that's we'll take in action if we do get the green light from yourselves and from town meeting. Then we have a pledge that we're going to actually send out to our neighbors, where we'll be hoping to collect additional funds that will try to finish up things like park benches and picnic benches. Because up above this area, there's actually a little shade area that we'd like to put some benches and picnic tables where parents could sit up there while the kids are down below in the playground area. So we certainly want to be a part of it and contribute. And we already have reached out to preschool playmates and the Montessori school, which is right nearby. And they're certainly looking forward to the project if it moves forward. And we just didn't feel right sending the pledges out until we got the okay that the project was going to go forward. And that's what many of the residents of Farm Hills thought was the best idea and approach to do that, just because it's kind of tough to raise money for something that might not actually happen. So we're certainly looking forward to working with you on that and adding to the park itself. So I can take any questions. Or do we have any other feedback? Did I hit everything? Yeah.
I think when we did Bradley Woods, there was both a local financial contribution and there was construction work that was done as well. And the other question I'll ask to you, Mark, as well, is there any opportunity for state funding on this? Or
I can certainly look into that. I know that there was a park grant. I don't know if that's alive and well for this fiscal year, but I can certainly look into that.
PARC?
Yes, yeah. One thing I forgot to mention was that this request is significantly more money than the Bradley Woods Association request, and that's definitely related to our goal here for the geared towards special needs, because we've got the port in place rubber, which is 4 times the cost of the wood fiber. The wide platforms are heavy commercial grade platforms. That leads to why we're asking to double the cost from Bradley Woods. It's not that we like Farm Hills better than Bradley Woods.
Well, we certainly we certainly are looking into, like you said, we certainly are looking into additional grants where some of these groups for special needs may be able to assist us
It's
in some of these
helpful for us
pieces.
to know generally what the financial parameters are, because we have to make recommendations, and we are always asked for more funds than we have, so.
No, totally understand that. And I think the number that we've given you, I think, I mean, we certainly will probably have to raise money above that if we were to want any other additional pieces to go in, and according, like park benches and picnic table area. And we certainly are looking into that and want to get we would like to get the garden club involved, where we can help them, and we certainly would contribute to them trying to keep up the area with, full-time plantings, but also seasonal flowers and things like that too. So
I think it's great, and particularly the fact that you're allowing for adults who are watching to sit at the table and read the paper or play cards or do something, or do an exercise circuit, but not just sort of stand there waiting for the kids. But I wonder, in a future year, would it be possible to get some light, safe building materials like foam boards, foam blocks? Because kids like to put things together and knock them down, and you wouldn't want something heavy or splintery. But I think there are products that would be a kind of adventure playground feature without a big investment. I mean, this is great as it is, but I think maybe over time that might be something to think about too.
yeah, no, it's a great idea, but I think what happens is like what we've seen already, when you start bringing items down to the playground, where people have been dropping little vehicles and motorbikes on there for quite a bit of time, and you don't have somebody coming by and picking them up and taking them to the dump when they're down to 3 or 2 wheels, that you would need like a shed or something that you could store
That's a good point too.
Those types of, I mean, it's a great idea. It would be nice to have, and you need somebody to be fully managing the property at that time.
Getting close to our scheduled time. I know Mrs. Lotta has some questions, and I know somebody in the audience has some questions too.
I think I'm very supportive of this project for a number of reasons. Being part of the SNAP organization, you really do understand the underserved population and the needs that they have, and we do have nothing like this in town at all. And secondly, to have it down in South Hingham, we really do need to have a move to get more green space and recreational space in South Hingham. We just don't have it down there. Is your number, how good is that $100,000, and does it include parking?
I don't believe it includes parking, but Mark and I, we certainly talked about that because that parking area.
And
There is parking
pretty good
already
parking.
there,
Yeah.
and the area is really used a lot, even though that it looks like the current condition that it's in. I think it's just because it's really the only public field around. So my case if we get the funding and sit before the planning board, is that I don't really think the traffic is going to change all that much, because there's already quite a bit of traffic there using the ride-along toys. I think that it's going to look a lot nicer. It's going to be safer equipment. I think it could be a few more cars, but I don't think it's going to be substantially more.
I'm thinking more of where the special needs population will be going there. They may need better parking, better asphalt, so
Yes,
that the kids can, the mobility issues and being able to get out of the cars and vans.
Yes, it should be asphalted there, because it's like really hard, packed in place, rocks and dirt. The good news is that if that's done, it's flat from there to where this design of the playground would be, and it's right next to the parking lot. So it's not like a whole pathway has to be built to the playground.
But certainly identified parking spots for handicap that aren't there now certainly would want to be identified and marked there. So that certainly would be on the list of.
I mean, I identify as a South Hingham Farm Hills neighbor and think this is a terrific project in an underserved area, and it's great to provide access for all populations to use a playground. I do remember when we were out at the site, and as someone who's been at this park a lot, we talked about the access for wheelchairs and vans that would be pulling up, and that conceivably there would need to be a very small area that I guess could be paved. But This is in the Acord Pond Aquifer Overlay District. This feeds right into where Acord Pond recharges, and I mean, clearly this would need to be discussed by the Conservation Commission, but isn't an area that more impervious surface should be created. So I would advocate very strongly that more asphalt in an area that's recharging our drinking water is not something we should be doing.
Tony, did you have anything to add as project manager? Or?
No, I mean, I think Mark covered it. It clearly has a lot of neighborhood support, financially.
Hi, I'm Warren Pellissier at 147 Main Street, and I'm here today. I was formerly the president of the Hingham Sports Partnership, and I got a chance to meet Will McDonough way back when, and he got me onto the sports partnership, and then I went on as president. But he told me a long time ago to don't pay attention to the sports that there's plenty of people already volunteering for. There's going to be plenty of Little League coaches, plenty of soccer coaches. There's a lot to go around. Look for the community that's not served. So while I was at the sports partnership, I realized that there's this major community that we have here in Hingham that is not served. Believe it or not, there are 900 kids that are special needs in our community, one out of 10. So almost 2 years ago, we founded SNAP, South Shore SNAP, and it's a special needs athletic partnership. And what we're doing now is we're affecting those families that have not been served and not been served forever. Their kids have never got together on a baseball field, never got together on a soccer field, never got together on a basketball court, never got together as a group of kids, which is very, very important when you consider this park. I underestimated, I undervalued the part of just getting together, because I've for what we would call typical kids that played the sports, and we get a chance to enjoy the sports and all the activities with all of our friends, and they became our best friends in our lives, and also the best friends in our kids' lives. These kids don't have any place to go after they go to school. There are no activities for them. There's nothing that brings their parents together. When I first started the partnership, I said to Dot Gal, well, give me the list. I just want to get in touch with. She said, you got to be kidding. I don't even know the list. I mean, you can't get in touch with people. People have to reach out and want to see you. So the Special Needs Athletic Partnership has been the best thing that has helped this community come out and come together. So now all of a sudden, through the programs that we're running at the South Shore Country Club, at crew at the Lincoln Sailing Center, at dance at the Plymouth River School, at bowling, again, at South Shore Country Club, and tennis and golf and all the rest of the things that these kids are now going to, they actually are meeting kids of the same ilk, if you will. They're developing friendships that are ongoing. Families are meeting each other. They're going out to dinner. We had a get-together at the end of our summer program, and it's the first time these kids ever received a trophy, and they took their trophy to bed with them. So this is a huge, huge opportunity. I heard a lot of talk about wheelchair access. Wheelchair access, it's important, and let's not forget about that. There's a lot of kids that unfortunately are confined to wheelchairs, but that's only 10% of that 900. So the others just don't have a place to go. And those tables, as you mentioned, Mark, or I forget, Ted, maybe you mentioned the tables. It's important for the parents to sit together and talk about their kids and talk about where they go and talk about the things that they do. This is a fantastic group. It's a fantastic group of parents, fantastic group of kids. This is a great project that further helps these kids intermingle into society and to develop at their own pace and at their own curve. So I couldn't be happier that that everyone is behind this, and that Mark asked me to come here tonight. Couldn't be more proud of the community for coming up with this idea. And also talk about the barn for 1 second. We will gladly rent the barn for our dance program. It will keep Irma from her part-time job looking for a place for our dance kids to dance.
Give them a contract, Mike.
So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Warren. Tremendous project.
Yeah, it is.
We've spent a little extra time on it, I think, because everybody recognizes its value. But unless there's further comment, I think we should move on to our next item, which is 149 Rockland Street.
Do you want to put the microphone back in the holder?
Good evening, Mr. Barbuto.
Good evening.
You're welcome to sit down and feel comfortable at the mic. And Jim, will you be presenting as well?
My name is Tony Barbuto. I live at 7 Pine Street, Hingham. I was here last year, and I own the property at 149 Rockland Street. And last year, I was willing to sell that whole property. The property consists of 4.22 acres, and I was willing to sell the property for $400,000. This year, I changed my mind, and I'm offering the property. I'm offering sections of the property. I can offer 1 acre lots. 1 acre for $100,000, 2 acres for $200,000, 3 acres for $300,000, 4 acres for $400,000. Now, you people are interested in the watershed. I own to the middle of the Weir River, and I own that big rock, the Rock Hill. And if you're interested in both of those, the watershed and the Rock Hill, I'm willing to sell it for $200K. I know it's a lot of money, but that's my proposal. And if you okay it, it's all right. If you don't okay it, pass me by, and we'll try another time. But that's the way I feel about it right now.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing it before us again. Jim, did you want to add to those?
Yeah, I just want to thank Barbuto family for coming forward again and stating the position. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Jim Morris with the Open Space Committee, 3 Glenwood Road. And we were here last year and presented something similar. Mr. Barbuto wanted to state his position clearly, and he has. The property continues to be really, really attractive from an open space point of view. It hits all the criteria right on the money. It's a wonderful piece of property if we could acquire it for town use and to protect this land. As he described, it's got a viewpoint that is, very particular. It's on a watershed that should be protected. So it hits all our criteria. I think that the challenge that we have is our preliminary appraisal, rough. We haven't done a formal appraisal, is not very close to the Barbutos family's price. So therefore, we're not, unless we were to come up with a way of getting close to that price, at this point, I don't see, it's going to be a challenge for us to get there. I think we're fairly far apart in terms of where we think the appraisal will come out at. The only thing that we could do is perhaps have a formal appraisal done and see where it is. But our estimates is that it's going to be quite far from the number that he's just outlined.
Mr. Barbuto, we're prohibited by law from buying a piece of property for more than the appraised value. So I think almost all of us on this committee love this piece of property. When I see the Weir River rippling down towards Rockland Street there, it is a spectacular piece of property. But we'd love to get it, and we're just tied, we have our hands tied by the need for an appraised price that meets your price.
Does the appraisal, excuse me, does the appraisal distinguish the value of the several pieces? I think the two pieces by the shore that aren't buildable.
Yeah,
but scenic.
we have some estimates that we've put together that are really, at this point, fairly rough. The variation on the estimates would be high, and we've outlined those to Tony.
So high value on the buildable land and lower value on the shore?
Exactly. The lower value is the portion that's less buildable, that's closer to the water. And the buildable portion that has a sewer hookup would appraise much better, much closer to what he's looking for. But the sum of the two isn't close to what he's looking for. And the one that the one that we would like to acquire is obviously the one that's adjacent to the river. And that's likely to appraise quite a bit lower than he's looking for. So we're stuck. We're at a quandary. It's unfortunate, but I think that, you know, as I've mentioned to Mr. Barbuda previously, we can only either go with what we have today, which is going to be different than what he's looking for, or come back another time. And he just wanted to make his position quite clear.
Of the 4 acres, are you recommending just 2?
Of the 4, 2 that are adjacent to the Weir River would be very attractive to open space. So that would be an option for us. It's just we're far apart in terms of figures.
Last fall, I saw 2 artists from Nashville standing on the Rockland Street, and they were painting that river. And they liked the scenery there, and they spent a lot of time. It was a windy day and everything else, and they had to steady their arms with a stick in order not to, in order to stay in their lines. And they thought it was a pretty nice scenery. And I didn't see the whole thing. I just was passing by at the time, and I just saw them painting that.
Is it my memory from last year that the appraisal on all, or the indicated price on all 4 acres was still below the 400?
That's right. He has come down from what the estimated asking was at this point last year. So we are at a lower point, but we're not close to what we think it's going to appraise at.
So even if we bought all 4 acres with the idea that we'd sell off 2 of them, we couldn't make it work.
No, we're not in the real estate business.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the members of the committee?
We could be here next year, right, Tony?
Well, I just ask that you keep an open mind in view of the legal requirements, and you know, I think this committee is willing, and Open Space is willing to be creative if we can. So I think that's the best I can say. And Jim, while I have you here, in terms of an agenda for our December 3rd meeting, would Open Space like to address us on your kind of like 5-year view of prospects?
December 3rd. Another date would work, more than likely, but December 3rd is a tough date.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
let's get together.
We'd like to do this, but you know,
okay.
that timing would be a challenge.
We'll find the right time. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Thank you, Mr. Barbudo. Thank you, Mrs. Barbudo. And we have the next project is the Hingham Historic Commission's project concerning the restoration and placement of probably one of the sole remaining pieces of the Melville Garden. Pardon?
Community gardens one way.
Did I skip one?
You did.
I'm sorry, Mike. I skipped one. Yeah. Can I apologize and go back to 111 High Street?
You might lose your quorum for a minute. 2 of us have to go to the bathroom.
And a brief recess has been requested.
Okay.
Good evening.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Leo Sherman. I live on 117 High Street, and the lot in question is 111. I have been using that land for many years as a vegetable garden, probably 15 or 20 years. Started out very little, and over the years I have developed a fairly large space, probably around 1 acre. The land is very fertile. And in fact, years ago, I think it used to be a farm, as I understand it. And I have grown a lot of different vegetables on that lot. I have grown corn, potatoes. I have about 25 blueberry bushes, very productive. In fact, I sold over 40 quarts out on the high street last summer, and the summer before the same, and managed to freeze a lot more. A lot of corn I sold also to a lot of people. And other things, I have grown all kinds of tomato plants, butternut squash. I harvested 125 butternut squash this year, and about 30 acorn squash, and a lot of pumpkins, string beans, summer squash, zucchini, and there's still room to expand to make even more gardening available. The reason that I like to sell it to the town, 2 reasons. Number 1, I like to get the money, and number 2, I have put a lot of work into developing that, and I like to realize before they put me underground that it's going to be continued as a vegetable garden. As far as the water, I don't think it's going to be a problem whatsoever. I can drive a pipe down with a point, probably 8 feet, and get all the water that the garden needs for around $400. That includes a pump and all the material that goes with it. I know how to do it. I've done it. I could help. And so I think it's in a very good location. And perhaps some of the trees would have to be cut down for additional parking. And by the way, there's about 10 or 12 maple trees, sugar maples, on that lot. Years ago, when my kids were young, I showed them how to make maple syrup on an old wooden stove. It wasn't grade A when we got through with it, but it was okay. And they did learn how and where maple syrup came from. And another thing that I like to think that kids, I imagine there's quite a few of them that they know where a lot of food and vegetables and meat is bought. It's in the grocery store. But they don't, a lot of them I don't think realize, hey, it comes from the ground, a lot of it. And I think that is another factor that maybe kids would get involved in the garden itself. Janice?
My turn?
It's your turn if you want to.
Okay. Do I need to speak into this? Hi there. Yes. So my name is Janice McPhillips. I live at 34 Franklin Rogers Road. And I guess I was asked here by Scott McIsaac because he knows that I'm an avid gardener and I work at Holly Hill Farm. And I'm not a farmer. The farm actually is home to two entities. Friends of Holly Hill Farm is a nonprofit education center that's based at the farm, and then there's a for-profit farm that grows and sells vegetables. So the nonprofit does education programs on the farm and at local schools. And so Scott contacted me because he knows that I teach programs at the farm about a lot of what you were just talking about. A lot of kids say, where does something come from? And they say it comes from a can, or it comes from my mom's car, or it comes from that plastic bag, or whatever. So we teach a number of different kinds of programs, and I've been involved in garden education for a long time. I've been a gardener myself for, I don't even know, 30-some years. And I've worked for Friends of Holly Hill Farm for about 7 years now. So anyway, my interest in this project is that I think Hingham should have a community garden, although actually I was just talking to somebody here. I didn't realize that Glastonbury Abbey has a community garden. It's a small one. There are 12 plots, and that's it. So 12 plots does not, I would say, satisfy the needs of a community the size of Hingham. So Scott contacted me a couple of weeks ago. I went to Leo's yard, and he gave us a very nice tour on a beautiful day and showed us where everything is laid out. So it's obviously a very productive piece of land, and it is in a good location, has very easy access and parking. As far as what you need to make a community garden happen, well, I did a little bit of research since I not personally have a plot at a community garden, although I'd love to have one. I have a friend who lives in Boston who I've been to visit her community garden. I'm sure you guys have seen there's various places where you'll drive by and there'll be a fence and, you know, lots going on behind the fence. So there are many throughout Boston. And I visited her garden. She lives in Roslindale, and I know a little bit about that. And I contacted her, and she gave me a set of her bylaws. Most community gardens are governed by bylaws. So I visited the Hull Garden Club, the Hull Community Garden, which maybe you've seen. It's on a point just as you enter Hull, before you get to that first traffic light on the left, kind of across from where Java Jungle is. It was just put in last summer, so they just completed their first year this past summer. And I spoke to the woman who developed that, and then actually people I work with developed the community garden in Situate, which you might see when you drive down 3A. So I have three sort of working models of what a community garden should look like, and I'm not saying that a community garden in Hingham should be run like any of those, but you know. I personally have an interest in seeing this happen because I think it's a great thing. I think there are, and in fact, one of the things I talked to Scott about, you know, first obvious question is there enough interest in Hingham? You know, we live in a town where people have big backyards, and if you want a garden, most people have them. Well, actually, right across the street from where you live, in that Whitcomb Ave neighborhood, I remember when I first moved here, I thought I would never buy a house in that neighborhood because there's too much shade. And if you want a garden, you can't because there's way too much shade. So there might be people who have too little land. There might be people who don't have the right kind of land, too much lead, not enough sun. So I've actually been talking to people, and I used everyone's favorite form of social media, Facebook, just last night, and I put a little note out on Facebook, just out of curiosity, you know, if there was to be a community garden in Hingham, would anybody be interested? And I got about 8 responses. So without trying too hard, and just in talking to people around town, I could easily name probably, I don't know, 10 people, and that's without doing any real work. Obviously, there would need to be some organization involved, you know, bylaws, you know, some kind of an agreement, a community meeting and whatnot to see, to organize the whole thing. So, like I said, there's it's called the Teak Sherman Garden in Scituate. That was land that was purchased with Scituate CPC funds. The Hull Garden Club, this Boston Garden Club, community garden that a friend of mine has a plot, and I think there's adequate interest, and we know that it's a proven piece of land. So,
is this something that either you individually or the Friends of Holly Hill Farm would be willing to run with for some period of time?
Yeah, I don't think the Friends of Holly Hill Farm per se would run it. They don't manage gardens off-site, although we are involved with 30 different school gardens around the South Shore. And as far as managing those in the summer, mostly what we do is we get parents of students who are in that particular school to help in the summer. So we don't manage gardens off-site. I mean, my kids went to Plymouth River. Plymouth River has a great garden, and in the summer I usually get parent volunteers to help. I go there a lot. I volunteer my own time. I don't really get paid for that. So I don't know that I will say this, the co-worker of mine who has a plot at this Teak Sherman Garden in Scituate said to me that managing one of these can be very labor intensive. And so I guess it would, you know, the CPC would have to decide whether or not you wanted to put aside some funds to pay a manager, or like a small stipend perhaps, whether that would be me or somebody else. It, you know, depends. I don't know how, like the one that's run at Glastonbury Abbey, I think the person there is in charge. I don't know. You'd have to sort of figure out if that's something that you'd be comfortable.
Question whether the CPC could authorize funds for running that kind of.
Right.
I think that would have to be done through the schools or through perhaps conservation.
Yeah,
or
the CPC couldn't. It would be an operating fund. It couldn't fund that.
I have a question, and this is to Mr. Sherman. How did we come upon the price? I don't know that we've discussed where the price came from.
It came directly from me.
Okay.
I've had a lot of people, including some of my family, say that I'm giving it away at that price. But the reason I came up with that is twofold. There's a lot of competition for the money and a limited amount of funds. So rather than reach sky high and have it not develop as a community garden, that's how I came up with that figure. And one other thing, I would be willing, if the town sees fit to purchase it, I'd be willing to continue to maintain it. And I think that's one big problem, that to find someone that's willing to put their time in and the know-how how to maintain it. I've got some equipment that will do that. And there again, I know how to get water. I've done it before. And I've priced the same material, a pump, a 3/4 horsepower pump, $400, and I get 10% off that up at Home Depot.
Jim Morris, did Open Space want to comment on this at all?
Jim Morris.
open space, 3 Glenwood Road, it's kind of hard to not comment because although it doesn't tick all the boxes in terms of what our criteria is for open space, it offers a wonderful opportunity for open space in a residential area in a manner that has been nicely described as a good opportunity to develop a community garden, and apparently there's some interest out there. So if we could find a way to do it and maintain it, would be an interesting opportunity for the community. And that is, I think, the consensus. If speaking from open space, that's the consensus of our committee.
And this does abut some existing conservation land.
It does. It does indeed.
Is the land of interest if it wasn't a community garden?
Less so, to be honest with you. It may remain as it is, because I don't know that it would be easy to develop. Nevertheless, it's difficult for us to say, because it does abut conservation land, to say no, it wouldn't be of interest at all. It does, but would it rank compared to some other properties? Less so, to answer your question.
Do we have any...
You're welcome.
I mean, like all pieces of open space we consider, as we did earlier with 149 Rockland, do we have any sense of what this... I mean, this would have to appraise at something, at some value. We have any idea?
I have some notes that I took from Scott, and he come up with. You want me to list some of the things?
I mean, the actual dollar value that we could pay is a function. I mean, subject to appraisal. We have no idea. Do we have any idea? 60,000.
Scott give you some comparable prices of other open land?
He says that it would end up being around $75,000, $80,000 after expenses. That's including
the value of the land.
Oh, the value of the land? I don't know.
Okay.
That number may
That would have to be appraised.
That may be including legal expense for acquisition and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our checklist.
Okay.
3 1/3 acres.
Yeah, so I think, Matt, if we do the math at 3 1/3 acres, this price at $60,000 is quite reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, I got from the 875 Main Street project that we had last week, which, I had discussions with Gary Tondorf-Dick from the planning board. The price for any piece of open space is subject to what its highest and best use is, and whether it has the frontage and could be developed for some residential property. I'm not on the planning board. I can't tell the parameters and whether this has the frontage and the set aside and the ability, which would be whether it would appraise. I mean, I support the concept of a community garden and obviously contiguous open space, all valuable things. So I don't really have there's no definitive statement. I mean, I guess everything is subject to what the price is that we're allowed to pay. Irma, sorry.
Picking up on your point, Janice, the organizations that you've talked about that had bylaws, were these within the organization or were these actual town bylaws?
Oh, no, these were specific to the community garden.
Okay. Perhaps, and I think Vicki said it, maybe somebody, I heard Concom, perhaps before we get together again, because the concern I would have, I think this is a great project, and it's a beautiful piece of land, because I know where you are. Everybody follows the Beagle sign. Easy. That what happens, who's going to run it? And then who's going to maintain it? And then how do you decide who gets a plot? Because it could become so popular that you're going to run out of space.
Well, the woman that I know was a spot in Boston. I mean, there's a waiting list. And, somebody manages it, and, whether there's a lottery, obviously what you do is you create a list, and if you have 10 plots and 10 interested parties, then great. If you have 10 plots and 50 interested parties, then you have a lottery or some,
The issue for me is, who is that organization? And I'm not sure I see it within the town, but I would defer to Abby. And then
you're not sure you see it within the town?
Right, because then you're going to end up with an operating budget for it.
Well, the one in Hull is run by a volunteer. The one in Situate, same thing, is run by a bunch of volunteers. There is a small stipend that's paid to someone to do some, it happens to be my boss. He does some teaching there.
4-H does a lot of work down at the Weir River Farm.
4-H does do a lot of work, right?
And they're kind of set up for doing this type of thing, especially with kids.
Right. But they do it on the farm. I'm not sure that you would see them off the farm as much.
I agree with Irma. I think the thing that's really going to make this project pop is to identify somewhere before January somebody that is going to make community gardening move forward.
Would Weir River some additional expenses? I mean, I know the Boston one on Berkeley Street, you drive by, and those things have set, there's established areas. And
what I think needs
right,
to
so I'm
go
just
into
saying that it's not like you just get the land and all of a sudden you have a community garden. You have to do all the prep work.
Sure.
Having once tried to chop up my lawn, very holy
Well,
smokes.
this land does not need to be
you have
prepared.
to plow
It's
it,
already
rototill it and everything.
No, it's already been. It already is a garden. I mean, most of the area has been cultivated, and there would not need to be. It's not like you're turning a piece of grass into a garden. It's already.
Figuring out the bylaws and the plot designations is probably beyond tonight's scope,
Right.
but it would be great the next time you're presenting to us if there had been significantly more development about who's going to make it go. We've got to move on, but
I'll be quick. No, I'm Jim Watson. I worked on the open space plan, and we put in references to community garden potentials in many places. The best was the Monte land that so far hasn't worked out, but might. Low and moist, sunny, etc. But as part of that, I visited some also, not as much as you have, Janice, but I went to the ones in Easton, which is another wealthy town with manicured lawns, and they came up with a nonprofit group, as you're saying, an organization. It was such a success, they found some more land. And their plots ranging from 2 or 3 of these desks to half this room. You didn't get more than you could manage. And I'll try to find their bylaws, because there was an organization running it. But I think in a lot of places there's more interest than you realize. And a lot of us have ledge and shade and trees and can't grow much, except things we didn't plan to grow.
Maybe talk to the trustees or Weir River Farm before you come back and see if there's any interest
from the
there.
garden club was approached. You know what? I can tell you, quite honestly, I would be very surprised if they would be interested. They're very busy managing, just like, Holly Hill is very busy managing their own farm. Farms generally have enough to do. They don't necessarily, they're not looking for ways to be involved in the community. Friends of Holly Hill Farm is a little unique because we do on-farm education and off-site. We're the only entity like that where we go out into the community and do education on-site at schools.
task, Scott, with heading up a task force to identify a manager.
Several weeks ago, when we first talked about this, it wasn't something we were going to take forward. Then it was suggested that we speak to the garden club, and as a result, we're here having this conversation. So we have progressed it, and clearly there needs to be more work, but it's much further along than it was several weeks back, so that's a good thing.
Conservation Commission voted totally support the idea with the Amati property, and they appointed Scott to work on it, so that there's been support. It hasn't quite connected with because of other things.
It's a tremendous idea. We just need those 5 people on the board that are going to make it go for the next 25 years. Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Janice. Thank you, Jim.
It's a beautiful piece of land.
And Mike, you could reprise your initial bow. We have the Hingham Historic Commission's gazebo project. We need a bigger room and more chairs.
Yeah, nice.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
We need a year's worth of groundwork on community garden. I mean, I don't think it's going to be developed in the next 3 months.
Well, I mean, please.
Mike Dyer, 11 Planters Field Lane, Vice Chair, Hingham Historical Commission, Vice President, Boston Harbor Island Alliance, which is the nonprofit partner of the Boston Harbor Islands National Park area. Project before you this evening, I think, is kind of an interesting one. Hingham is unique in the sense that it's one of a handful of about a dozen partners that actually own and operate land inside a national park area. And I think that that's lost on a lot of Hingham residents. The 4 islands that make up Hingham Harbor, Ragged, Sarah, Langley, and Button, are part of the National Park Service area. They're managed as part of a cooperative of, like I said, a little over a dozen agencies. They are historically important to Hingham. Originally, the islands were inhabited and used by Native American population. They were later bought by John Langley, who named the islands after his daughter, Ragged Sarah Langley, later known as Madam Derby. They had their residence on Ragged Island, which is the island that is the if you were on Otis Street, kind of at the corner of Downer Avenue, it's the one kind of closest into the corner over there. There's a map, you probably have seen it at some point reviewing this stuff, Appendix F, that kind of gives you a better sense of the harbor itself. The island furthest to the left of the page is Ragged Island. Interesting, you'll see in Appendix C, which is something that we see a lot, working out with the 34 islands that make up the Boston Harbor Islands National Park area. There have been a wide variety of uses for the islands, ranging from military forts to private homes, estates, hospitals, you kind of name it. Ragged Island is not any different than that. In the late 1800s, Samuel Downer had developed Downer Landing and the Rose Standish Hotel, which existed where the current Hingham Yacht Club was located. There was daily steamboat service that would bring folks down from Boston to Downer Landing to take in the resort. Melville Garden was situated next to it, basically at the corners of Downer and Otis Street, where they are today, kind of that little pocket there of Walton Cove. And it included a mix of things, everything from bowling alleys and clam bake shacks to bear pits. It was a wide variety of establishments out there. Ragged Island had a restaurant, had a pier, and it also had a variety of these small gazebos on it. A little over the year ago, it was brought to the attention of the Hingham Historic Commission that one of the original gazebos from Melville Garden was in town. It was in a state of, to say disrepair is an understatement. It was basically falling over on its side. It is a simple structure, and you can see from Appendix B, there's kind of 2 pictures of it, one from maybe 25 feet back and then a closer one. Basically a 4-columned gazebo with a conical roof, cedar shake top, 2 interior benches. If you look at basically a drawing from a book that was done in the late 1890s on Appendix C, you'll see a very similar looking gazebo at the top of a rocky outcropping, little round finial conical roof, 4-pillar post, which I think is about as close as a direct resemblance as you can come between those 2 structures. Hingham Historical Commission saved the remains of the gazebo. Basically, the main part that exists of the original structure is the conical roof itself. The benches and the 4 piers are pretty rotted out, but pretty basic in their design. That is the remains of this are in storage in town. It's owned by the town at this point. Ragged Island, along with the other 4 islands in Hingham Harbor, are property of the town. Talking to the superintendent of the National Park Service, as well as the director from the Northeast region of the National Park Service, there has been an interest in working closer with the town, not only on Ragged Island, but in regards to Langley. We've met with Ken Corson, the harbor master, on several occasions. about trying to utilize that island more for the public. And then Sarah, which is heavily used by migratory birds, trying to protect its access. National Park Service is interested in seeing Ragged utilized and kind of returned in some fashion to its historical context. Having this historical gazebo in place would be a benefit to the National Park Service and to the Island Alliance. We see this as a way of kind of further connecting the national park brand, the national park that's in Hingham's yard, in our backyard, directly with the town. It's not necessarily a difficult project from the standpoint of restoration. The gazebo is very simple. However, having done a fair amount of work on islands, there's always some more logistical work that comes into these type of restorations, moving equipment over on boats, clearing the area. Right now, Ragged is ragged, to say the least. It's a little overgrown, has some poison ivy and some other things that would need to be cleaned up. The total ask of the town is a little over $12,000, $12,500. That would cover all the cost of the necessary for restoration, plus any type of transportation. We think that that is a conservative estimate. We actually think it's a little high. If there was any overruns in that construction cost, we'd be able to deliver that back to the town. The National Park Service, as well as the Boston Harbor Island Alliance, would be contributing an additional $10,000 in time and material for site preparation, clearing any necessary trails to provide access to the gazebo, and bringing in some of our architectural resources up from Philadelphia to assist in review of the final plan and any of the restoration that took place.
Thank you, Mike. Great presentation. Any questions or comments?
Does it have to be on an island? I mean, it seems like to get there, you have to go buy a boat first, because a lot of us don't have boats. So
bathing suits are cheaper.
What? Bathing suit, yeah. So it's a good place. But I mean,
you're getting a boat.
I mean, I guess it's like trying to get on the boat, and then plus, it seems like it's kind of opening itself up to vandalism. People kind of heading out there, just a little spray paint and stuff like that. So, I mean, could it just go and Hingham on the land?
Well, 2 points. One, Hingham on the land is not the historical context with which this gazebo existed. Part of the Historical Commission for preserving the gazebo was it was intended to go back, ideally as close to where it originally came from as possible. Unfortunately, most of Melville Garden is now private property. So unless we stuck it in somebody's backyard, could be challenging is to put it in a public place. Representing the National Park Service, the Hingham Bathing Beach, the shoreline along there is not part of the park. This is where the gazebo likely, or one of its cousins or sisters, existed. The organization that I work with in partnership with the National Park Service and Department of Conservation and Recreation and World's End and other parts of the national park, we're used to managing islands, access to them. It's something that we are used to dealing with, maybe the threat of vandalism. So I would say it's actually maybe a little bit higher than you would expect, because it's a little bit more difficult to get to. It's not the type of place that maybe you would have vandalism like a street sign on 3A or something like that. It's possible, but a little less likely.
Just 2 other things. One, I noticed that the town of Hingham is responsible for maintaining this, so I'm not sure if, if something's out in the open like that with the weather, I imagine that this is going to need, fairly regular maintenance. So I'm not sure who's signing up for that, if the town is.
Responsible for it. Have they been talked to?
We had an initial conversation with Mary Foley and some of the folks about a year ago, talking about the concept of actually doing some additional work on Langley Island that was going to result in installation of campgrounds, picnic tables, and some other structures. And there was a willingness both by the town at that point and by the National Park Service to come up with a cooperative management plan. That same interest in developing a cooperative management plan exists today with NPS.
in this at all?
No, actually, I don't know. Is there any work that takes place there now that you can
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I know Ken Corson had given me, and I think it was on Langley, to put on my list of potential Boy Scout Eagle or Girl Scout Gold projects, working to clear up some campgrounds and build like a lean-to. And I think I've seen this, because it's in storage in one of the Bear Cove Park buildings. It's small.
Yeah, it's not very big.
It's not huge.
No, I mean, it's like 15 by 15 is the total
I was
footprint.
surprised at how small it is.
Right. I mean, if you had to paint it every year, it's a couple $100 of paint. Like, it isn't a very complex nor a very large structure.
The Historical Commission did try to identify a number of appropriate sites on the mainland without an awful lot of success. Trying to find a place that wasn't just purely on private property. And I actually think those of us from the Historical Commission thought that Mike's proposal of getting it back in its original setting as part of perhaps the beginning of this National Park and Town Alliance was a good thing.
Yeah, Bob, I talked to one of the people from the yacht club just by chance at one of the meetings, and I kept thinking that would be pretty good, be on be on Crow Point, near where it was, and at the edge of their big parking lot. And he said, well, they had plans for the parking lot, and then I didn't realize your point that it should be on Park Service. It should be within the park itself, so that most of these onshore sites don't fit that.
There's no onshore sites on Crow Point or inside the bathing beach that are part of the National Park Service area. The closest would be Foster Elementary, but I don't.
Any other comments, questions or comments from the public? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rennis? Yeah. Double check me, but I think Glastonbury Abbey's next.
Yep.
Evening, Father Morcone.
Good evening.
You may want to introduce yourself for our viewing audience.
Nicholas Morcone, 16 Hull Street. I'm here to speak on behalf of Glastonbury Abbey concerning the repair and restoration of our tower building. And I think right at the beginning, if you just want to, I know most of you, if not all of you, have seen it, but if you'd pass that around, just so there's no confusion, we talk about the tower. And I guess some people think we're only talking about that vertical structure. When we talk about the tower, we're talking about the whole building. Okay, there is the vertical part of it and the horizontal part that comes out from it. So just so that I'm clear about that, if I want to talk about a particular part of it, I'll tell you. But I just want to address the building as a whole. The building, the tower, was built in 1921 as part of a private summer estate owned by a Boston wool merchant. From 1954, when the monks first came to Hingham, until 1962, it was used as a Sunday chapel. Since that time, it has basically been used for storage. For the last 100 years, however, it has been a landmark in our part of town. It's readily identifiable by certainly everyone in the neighborhood and most people going by. What we would like to do is restore and maintain it as a local landmark and also as a gathering space for the Abbey's guests, people who come on retreat, etc., and also for anyone who wants to make use of our grounds. Our grounds are open to the public and are used by many people as they would use a public park, and that's quite fine with us. We would expect this building to be used in the same way once it were made secure and safe, that people could use the 2 rooms in the vertical structure as maybe a gazebo, as you were talking about with the previous presenter. We do have a long-term plan. We've had the building looked at by engineers with expertise in historical structures, and they presented us with at least the outline of a plan to first make it weather-tight, then properly vented, and finally safe on the interior so that people can actually go into it safely and use it, while at the same time preserving the structure of the building in an appropriate way. We have already asked for and received a grant from the Greenbush Historical Preservation Trust to restore and repair the roof at the top of the vertical structure. And what we're asking you for is a further grant to do the same to the roof on the horizontal part of the building as a first step towards making the building weather-tight. The next step would be to put vents in all the openings going up the tower, the horizontal one, in order to both close it to the weather and yet ventilate it properly so that condensation doesn't occur on the inside and further deteriorate the structure. And then eventually we would like to clean up and repair the inside, make sure that the access to the top of the tower is safe, and eventually open it to the public. And that, in a nutshell, is what we're looking for.
A couple of comments that I have is that generally, with respect to private proponents who are seeking CPC funds, we are looking for a significant contribution from their own assets or fundraising towards that project. And I know we've talked about that in the past, and I note from your balance sheet that there is a very significant amount of money on it, which I understand arises from the sale of the Lincoln School apartments. And is that funding restricted in some way?
That funding is restricted. The monastery operates at an annual deficit. The money from the Lincoln School is under the supervision of the Attorney General of Massachusetts, and it is in a foundation, the Glastonbury Abbey Charitable Trust, which we have some access to under the Attorney General's purview. And this project would not fall under what she, either the old one or probably the new one, would approve.
Has she, either the old one or the new one, been asked?
Not yet, but we know the kinds of things that they've told us we can do in the past. One of the things that we can do with it, it can make up our annual deficit. The other thing we can do with it is we can use any income from it to give to other charities. Okay. And that's pretty much what they've told us we can do with it.
The second comment and concern that I have, and then I'll let others ask their questions, is I see at least out there on the horizon, a total expenditure for this building of $544,000, and I kind of feel like this is the camel's nose in the tent.
It might be.
Does the monastery foresee that you would be coming back to the CPC in future years?
We might be coming back here. We're also looking elsewhere.
Can I butt in from
Go right in.
I know you've got some of your
financial expertise. Yeah.
I'm Hayes Shea.
Could you please come out?
Yeah. Use the mic. Want to sit next to me?
I'll just set up here. I'm Hayes Shea, 18 Lafayette Avenue, and I work at Glastonbury Abbey. I help with fundraising and public relations and marketing. And we have a plan. Yes, you've seen the 3-year plan. It's fluid. We have been encouraged to apply again to the Historical Commission by the person that we worked with, and also the Mass Historical Commission. And then we have a few major donors that we're going to, with an interest in historic preservation, that we're going to approach as well. But as you know, the mission of the Abbey is prayer and hospitality, and the monastery itself is our top priority, keeping that in a fine condition, safe and comfortable for the monks. And then we have 2 retreat houses, and our second priority, as our mission is hospitality, is to take care of our guests and to make sure that they are safe and comfortable as well. So the business office is falling down. I mean, there's a lot of the buildings are just decrepit. As fundraising priorities, we have to take care of the monastery, the grounds and the retreat houses first and foremost. The stone tower, it's just such a beautiful landmark. But on our list of priorities where we can put our money forward, we have things more important than that. And we do everything in our power to raise money for those other projects as well. We have direct mail, and we do apply to some other foundations, and we've gotten a foundation grant for the roof of the monastery that was leaking and bats were flying in. So we've had success with fundraising, but the people that come to Glastonbury Abbey they love to support the monks and the retreat, the retreat program, I'd say. We do have a few that we're going to approach for the stone tower. But yeah, this is a multi-year program, and we have fundraising plans, but we are going to be coming back. But not for mega grants.
Could we ask you to get a ruling from the Attorney General? Because having been part of the Lincoln School Department and sitting at chair of the advisory, that's a pretty good chunk of money.
We can ask.
Sure. I'd ask you to do that, because it doesn't feel right. I'll be honest with you, with all the requests.
It doesn't feel right to us, quite frankly, but fine.
My understanding is that for the tower, I'm not sure how anyone's climbing up that tower because the stairs are like crazy, but the building with the, well, I don't know, somebody made it up there. But
some people made it on.
Jim Watson did too.
It was pretty daunting visually. It's not ADA compliant. But the vertical building, my understanding was there's no heat or electricity in that building.
No, it's a seasonal building.
So and if it was restored, so it could only be used seasonally, and would that be open, because it would be taxpayer money, does that mean everybody in Hingham could go and use it? And would there be a charge?
They use our grounds now.
Yes.
They could, somebody could reserve it for a party or something like that?
They'd find it inconvenient. I think it would be a better place for people to come and perhaps have a picnic, to sit and read a book, to enjoy the grounds, with no plumbing and no running water, or, it might be difficult to have a party there.
Has the Greenbush funds been used at all?
No, we were waiting for this because we'd like to do both roofs at the same time.
Because I know with the Greenbush hearing, we also talked about private-public partnership as well. And I know one of the things we've always looked at in the past is the maturity of a project. And it may be that you need to go back to the drawing boards on fundraising and then present a more developed project, because we want to see things brought to completion. And I'm not sure that this is headed in that direction.
Okay.
I mean, we did talk about the Mass Historical Commission. Given our experience on this committee with the Ames Chapel and their success at raising money from the Mass Historical Commission as a potential viable third party, I'd also echo what Irma brought up about the agreement with the Attorney General, worth exploring. I don't know if there's an exact fund split we're looking for of what the town puts in versus what comes in privately. I know in some places we've looked at a third, and a third, or 1-to-1. as external funding.
Most frequently, we've looked at 2/3 from the private proponent to 1/3 from the CPC. And we have varied that over the last couple of years, depending on the circumstances. So we don't have any bright line rule, but we are generally looking to leverage private funds with public funds to achieve goals such as historic preservation of this significant structure.
Fair enough.
On the hospitality of the Abbots, they're having a very good lecture series. This is a little bit to the side, hearing other voices. Tomorrow is Puri O'Malley about reconciliation in Northern Ireland and South Africa. But I mean, it's an example. They're making the big hall available for a free public event. Somebody's paying somebody to put it on, but you don't charge.
No, we don't charge for any of them.
And I recommend going to that.
There's no real question in my mind about public use of your property or public use of potentially of this building or
public service mission of the Abbey.
Or the need to get it preserved. It's the how, I think, that is the question. Any other questions or comments from the members? Any questions or comments from the public? Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing how this develops when we next see you. And we have the Second Parish Handicap Access is our next. Lisa, you're presenting on this?
That's okay. Clearly not a teacher.
You'd never make it in Las Vegas.
Just an opportunity to come
I actually downloaded these the other day. Yeah.
Oh, it's not new.
Yeah. No, I've seen this. Beautiful drawings.
This is nice.
It's a lovely design. Roger, did you have a chance to look at these numbers today?
Okay, so I'm going to just pull this over so I can just have something to look at myself, so maybe other people can see too. Talk about it. So,
Could you introduce yourself for our TV audience?
yep. So my name is Lisa Shetty. I'm property manager of Second Parish, and I'm here representing our proposal for a handicap access project into not just Second Parish, but Cushing Hall. So we're looking at this as a universal access into Cushing Hall. So the first picture that you have, so it's a little backstory. You were here last year for the same request, and you recommended that we use the funds granted at that time for a design. So we're here for the second phase of the project, which is the construction phase, and I'm showing you the designs that we have to date. So over the summer, we worked on these designs, and we encountered a couple of issues. The main one being the grading of the property. So if you were to enter into Cushing Hall at the site visit last year, you might have noticed there's a pretty deep or steep slope down towards Cushing Hall, so you kind of skip a little steps going into there. So you can't actually, even if we made it level to a point, the idea of rolling a wheelchair down in there, it's more kind of little roller coaster ride. So we thought that we were going to have to excavate the driveway, and we had several people in this summer to kind of give us an idea about what that was going to cost. And then we went to another plan, consulted with somebody else who came up with this elevated foundation. So if we elevate the foundation to meet the grade, that actually lowers or shortens the length of the ramp because you're coming in at a higher level now. So you're not going up as high. So we're able to achieve that flush entrance by raising the foundation. And I think when we were here last year, the plan kind of ended here. If you can see, like, yeah. So last year the plan ended about there, and we were just looking at it as like one long ramp that were to go in, a little bit kind of like an airport landing. But the other thing that we found out on working on these plans this summer is that the ADA requires a 5-foot square landing space at the either end of the ramp, both ends of the ramp. So that even makes the length of our ramp even longer. So the way that we got around that was by centering the door and extending the additional little over Cushing Hall, and then having a shorter ramp that goes up into the sanctuary and another shorter ramp that goes down into Cushing Hall. So does that make sense to all of you? So this is what it looks like from the outside. It's more of a 3D kind of version. This is what it would look like if you were looking at, you know, from the front of the church. So, you know, here's our beautiful church, and you can see that, you know, here's the entrance from the side view. And then an inside shot. So this is an actual photograph of the existing hallway, and then they just sort of overlaid a concept drawing. So now that we're coming in at a higher level, where you enter into Cushing Hall now, there would just be a couple steps with a center rail and then rails on either side to get into the original level. So does that make sense to everybody? So it's still, you know, the original hallway that goes up the stairs in the sanctuary, and then this parallel hall, which was always part of the design that we kind of left you with last year, but now we've just fleshed out a little bit more details, taking into account the grade, which was a major issue, and then some of the ADA requirements. And the major ADA requirements are the landing that I pointed out to you. And then also, we found out that the ADA for this type of project would require a handicap access bathroom, which, cleverly enough, we already did that on our own dime and on our own initiative about 5 years ago, or I think about that long. Then the other thing I wanted to leave you with was, I have one more handout for you. So the operative words that we're using in coming up with this design, and also with our fundraising, which I'll talk about in a minute, is dignity. So we want everybody to be able to access the structure with dignity, which we think that allows. It's a common entrance. Everybody's using the same entrance, basically. Also, service. And so the picture that I gave to you is, the top picture is a picture of what Cushing Hall looks like during a holiday distribution. So this is the food pantry taking over Cushing Hall to be able to provide approximately 175 families typically during the holiday season. And then the second picture is our sanctuary, also filled for a holiday distribution. So what you see in the pews in this picture are bags of produce that have been packed and lined up. And then on the far side are all the dry goods. Those are what are in the garbage bags there. Those are like paper towels and napkins and dish detergent and things of that nature. So that happens, 3 times during the holiday season: Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. But it also happens 2 Tuesdays every month throughout the year. not quite to this extent. You know, the numbers obviously balloon up during the holidays and drop down a little bit in the summer months, but clearly, you know, the food pantry is a big user of Cushing Hall, and the number of clients and volunteers that are accessing the space in order to make this all happen is pretty huge, I'd say. And then the other thing I just wanted to talk to you about was our fundraising. So in the project, or in the proposal, I had said that we would raise $50,000. We're upping that to $65,000 as of tonight. So we're confident that we can raise that amount. We have a very active fundraising committee. We've only just begun, really. So between some leadership donations from within the congregation, then we have several outreach to the neighbors that will be mailing neighbors and, you know, letting them know that we're really concerned about how this looks for them. You know, we don't want them to have to come home every day and look at a metal structure that is unattractive. So we're doing this with everybody's interest in mind. And then we'll outreach also to maybe some of the businesses that help sponsor the food pantry, and then just the community in general. So we have an idea for like maybe some larger scale donations, but then also just asking as many people as possible. And if you ask as many people as possible and they give $25 or $50, then before you know it, you've raised your goal. So that's where we're at.
Your request is for $100,000?
Our request is, so the budget right now is at, well, the bottom line number that he put in here is 191, but that already includes the design cost, so it's 181, or let's just call it 180. So the balance of 65, so what would that be, like 115? Yeah.
There's still some TBDs here, and I don't know if there's a contingency figured into this.
There is a contingency figured into that.
So it's
yes.
built into every number?
You know, I don't 100% know. I mean, some of this we're going to get bid out, so like the electrical, we haven't gotten different electricians in, and we haven't gotten the foundation bid out yet. And so this is, to the best of my knowledge, but some things will change.
Roger, you had a chance to look at these numbers?
Yeah.
Can you speak, grab a mic, or?
So just by way of a little bit of history, I think just Lisa did come last year before and was looking at a project that similar to this, and what we suggested at that point was that she go out and sort of, because these things with respect to ADA and access to her buildings become complicated, and I think that this sort of process that she's gone through has sort of demonstrated that was probably a good idea to do that, and I thank you for that. So in looking at that, we went through the numbers. I went through these numbers, and I've looked at what Lisa's done, and she went out and acquired the professional services of someone to sort of prepare the estimate. And I think based on what we're looking at here, it seems pretty consistent with the work that needs to be done in order to bring the facility up to the requirements, and the costs are consistent with that as well, I think. So I think the takeaway is that this is a fully vetted and designed and looked at project, and the costs that are expressed at this point should be what it takes to do the work, which I don't think was necessarily the case last year. So here we are with a really
where we are.
sort of washed out project. So I think that's a good start.
So you don't think there's any magic that's going to drive this cost down?
No. Probably not.
I think it's going up because not everything has been priced out. There's a number of significant TV. There seems to be several what could be significant additional items, like stonework on the exterior facade, tree removal, landscaping, gas company. So this is going up higher. It's not going lower.
Those kinds of things like landscaping, tree removal, I don't think is actually going to happen. Ideally not. Like, we'd like to preserve as many trees as possible. So some of those things are put in there like just in case, and until we get a little bit further into the project, you don't always know. But landscaping is like, and no contractor that you hire is going to say, I'll landscape it for you when I'm all done, and we're not even there yet. So what I anticipate happening is hopefully that we're able to do this project. We have kind of this window between June and September when activity at the church is at its lowest point. The food pantry is least busy at that time, and we'll have to come up with a plan for how do we service those clients. Do we get a pod so that we can stage their distributions from a pod if they can't get into Cushing Hall, or do we take all of the cushions out of the sanctuary so that they can stage it out there? Like, those are a couple of things that we have to figure out. But ideally, the work is done between June and September, but we know that there's still going to be like punch list items. And I think in the following spring is when we're going to have to address those things.
I have a question, Bob, and you may have addressed it and I might have missed it. Does something like this need to go in front of the Historic Commission? I mean, this is a historic building.
So.
Has
In the historic district?
Yeah.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Historic District Commission.
Right. And so part of the costs in here too, and part of the reason why I've been working with this company is because any detail that's on the original or older part of the church will be replicated in the design on the new addition. So all of the materials chosen, all of the windows will meet historic code. So
I guess my question, and this is more to you, Bob, don't they need to go before historic, before CPC would be granting money to build something that may not be?
I'm historical
This is
commission.
Historic District Commission.
Historic districts is different.
Okay.
That's a different committee. The Historical Commission does not do that. Well, they couldn't get a building permit unless the Historic Districts Commission signed off on it. I mean, you probably should contact Andrea Young and probably go before the Historic Districts Commission. I mean, I personally think it's a great-looking design. I mean, this project has improved so much from the original idea of cutting through a great old window and going under the fire escape on the north side of the building. I mean, this is really elegant, and in terms of an ADA access, it's, in my view, it's superb. I'd be very surprised if Historic District Commission didn't, say that, they'd totally support it.
What's notable in one of the slides, looking from the front of the building, is that the new structure is in the same plane as the side of the sanctuary. So when you look at the building going by, at the most you see the doorway entrance. You don't see this added structure.
no, it's not a huge protrusion. I mean, we did extend it out a bit so that it could meet the driveway at a flush level, taking into account the grading. But for the most part, yeah, that was the goal, was that it doesn't really change your front view of the church.
You've gone through 3 major changes in this life.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Exactly.
Steeples and colonnades.
Great pictures of your church and moving through time.
Oh, wow.
Hasn't changed at all.
What is it?
This is a new book that
Oh, I'll have to pick that up.
Fabulous book.
Oh, good.
I'm vamping it. Yeah.
In Mike Kandari's estimates, he's got $8,300 for design with town department interaction.
I don't know what that
And then I think that's working with HDC and the building department and everybody else. And then he's got $1,500 to cover permitting with the town. And what's MH? Whatever. So I think he's, Mass Historical maybe?
Mass Historical, possibly,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't be involved.
So there's like $10,000 in here.
Right.
To cover that. So
Right.
I think you're pretty well covered. And some of the other things that, like the landscaping, you could possibly have all that donated to.
Right. So
I
that
think-
would be something. We have a landscaping company that parks their equipment at our church in exchange for, so they might be involved in doing some of that. They might be willing to do that as.
Old Colony Lodge last year did a good job driving down its prices through friendly contractors. And you might have the same opportunity here. I'm sure you heard my comments about the last proponent, where we have typically probably look closer to 2/3, 1/3 for public-private with no bright line test. It certainly is great that you're coming up with the 65,000. If that could be advanced more before our final recommendation rounds, that would probably be a good thing. I'm sure you want to be conservative.
Well, that's why I came to you at 65, because that's the number that I know that we can raise. By January, hopefully, I'll know if we can raise any more, because we'll have had more time at it.
Gas prices are going down.
Exactly.
Any other questions or comments from the committee?
I think this is a great addition to the
It's
church.
a wonderful
and it's a
design.
spectacular church to start with.
The reason why we like it too is that without any kind of lift, there's no maintenance. Like, this is just a one and done project. Really, there's no long-term maintenance. Like, I don't know, 60 years from now, we'll ask you for a roof for the horizontal portion, but hopefully not.
Any questions or comments from members of the public?
Thank you for doing the food pantry.
Thanks so much. And we have 132 Scotland Street. Sharon, are you? Am I selling books tonight or what?
I think you're doing a good job of that. The only thing, I thought they sold them all. We couldn't get
No,
back.
you can still get that at the Historical Society.
We couldn't get back. We were at a scout raising, a fundraiser.
They
so
got
we
'em.
couldn't get back.
They've got them. Suzanne will sell you one.
I've got one. I was afraid that
Yeah, I did that first. Hi, I'm Bob Keys on the Housing Authority.
And Sharon Napier,
Our director.
Executive Director, Hingham Housing Authority.
And as you know, the Housing Authority owns the property at 132 Scotland Street, which was purchased with CPC money. It was built in 1920, and the woman that owned it did very little from the 1920s on, so as you realize, the building has sort of had its day. We're proposing it, rehabbing it, and what we would asking for this year would be a total of $57,168, and that would be to replace the windows, the vinyl siding, $34,368. Trim and remove branches encroaching upon the structure, remove existing landscaping that is against the structure, and replace with new plantings, $3,800. Replace the roof on the main house, strip existing shingles and new drip edge ice and water shield, 30-pound tar paper and shingles with architectural shingles, $14,000. Replace the roof and siding on the detached garage, $5,000 for a total of $57,168. That's year one. You asked for a 5-year plan. We have that too. And as far as the windows, I think, Bob, you suggested that I contact Mary Kuchera, and I did. She went out the following day, and she called me the next day and said she looked at the windows, and she saw a hodgepodge of windows, and she's really not interested in doing them.
And if I could just add, our original application, we had requested a little under, $34,368. And when we went out and did the site visit, it was recommended that we put together a 5-year plan, and it was also suggested that perhaps we may want to look at the roof as well as the windows and the siding. So we have added that as well. However, under the definition for the uses of the CPA funding, I understand that you're not allowed to use it for such things as trimming the branches and some other things that may not be protection of personal or real property from injury, harm, or destruction. That definition, we could go round and round with it. But at any rate, my maintenance staff, we do have some budget there. We have been able, over the last 3 years, to acquire a bit of some reserves. And that is because we've been able to use our maintenance staff to go out and use the Department of Labor and Union hourly rates, and so what we can do is we can work with the maintenance staff. We have a couple of part-timers who are more than willing to go out, and I can pay them those rates to go out and do some work on Scotland Street. They are willing, and we have in our budget the capacity to do the trimming and removing of the branches, as well as replace the roof and siding on the detached garage if that's something that you feel does not fit the definition. When we went back and did some numbers for the original application of replacing the windows and vinyl siding, we discovered that past experience, we had put in a walkway and some past capital improvements that we've done at Thaxter Park. It's pretty standard to put in a 10% contingency or change of work order, and we had originally put in a 5%. And so that original figure for the replacing of the windows and vinyl siding has increased by that amount. When we visited with the folks from the committee, it was also noticed that the roof may be in need of repair, and in fact, when we did go back and look at the replacement of the roof with the components of the property and the structure, we did discover that in our records, as far as we can gather, in the last 20 years, that roof has not been replaced, and there has been some leaking. And so we added that only because it didn't make much sense to do the vinyl siding and windows if we have a leaking roof. So we did add that in hindsight after we had visited the site with the committee. We also were asked to put together a 5-year plan, and so as you can see, the second year, I won't go over this. You can look at it at your leisure. We're not asking for that. However, because the town did use 100% CPA funding to purchase the property for affordable housing back in 2006, it is somewhat the town's responsibility to earmark some funding for capital improvements to keep it going. The Housing Authority does put in approximately $7,000 to $8,000 of what we receive in rent. However, keep in mind it's a 2-bedroom unit home, and the family does pay only approximately 30% of their income, which is between a low income household income, annual, if you will. And so there's a percentage. So there are some programs that we do have to monitor and administer in order to get a little bit more of a rent over there so that we can just maintain the house. And we've been able to do that for some time, but it is getting to be a little bit tired, as Bob had said, and we are needing to put some substantial money into to keep it viable, if you will. We also purchased a truck a couple of years ago, a maintenance truck, and so the maintenance men now are able to go over, and they are able to do the snow plowing, and it's quite a long roadway in order to get into the property, so that takes quite a bit of time, and it's a decent parcel of land. I'm thinking, without refreshing my memory on there, I'm thinking it's a little under an acre, I'm thinking, but there are half acre. But there are over 3 acres that the Conservation Commission had acquired along with the purchase of the building. So there's a lot of wetlands, and it's a large chunk of property. So the maintenance men have to go out there. There's upkeep of the grounds, if you will. So we have also had a moisture problem out there. We're calling it a mildew problem, so we did spend a substantial amount of money on correcting that. The basement was very, very wet, and there were some issues with that. We pay the insurance. The insurance company had some issues with the moisture as well, so we've had to upgrade some, just to maintain it. But again, as you can see, we are getting into some sort of big ticket capital items that the Housing Authority just does not have that in its budget to maintain the property. So there we are.
I'm not up or educated on affordable housing, so you'll have to bear with me. But
sure.
Whether or not this was an affordable house, I mean, as a person who would be even purchasing this house, these are capital expenses within 8 years that are beyond my budget, and I wouldn't be. So it's hard for me to understand how the town makes a decision to buy a property with the kind of capital expenses of this for one affordable home. It's hard for me to understand where did they think the money was coming from. I mean, this is a lot of money in the next 5 years.
When CPA funds are using, it is with the understanding that they will maintain the property. And I think what happens is with this is you want to get your affordability up to the 10%, and so sometimes looking at the figures on the paper, it doesn't appear that it makes sense, if you will, because it just seems like. However, this community is very aggressive with trying to reach their 10% affordability.
I saw the property. It's a beautiful property. I mean, it's a conservation area.
Yes.
And we spend so much time discussing beautiful conservation lands that we seem to be purchasing all over town. It's interesting to me that this particular property was chosen as an affordable housing unit where it may have been very likely to have been purchased by somebody.
Vicki, it was in the will.
Oh, all
was
right.
in
Well,
Gladys
all right. There's
Cushing's will.
information that we aren't.
Okay.
Yes.
Bought that purposely to stop the 40 division condos down there.
Right.
That's the whole purpose of it, really.
Had it sold to the town. And this is the only, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the only standalone piece of affordable housing that's rental.
Yes.
All of our other, like the condos and what Tim White was talking about, buying the property, the condo, for example, at Beals Cove, getting it into our affordable count, which for the record, Hingham feels that we've reached our 10%. That's taking time, but as soon as all of that's in place, that will be resold. So this is kind of a standalone one.
Right. Well, I mean, you're explaining why it was purchased to begin with these kinds of expenses is what I'm trying to.
Because we're looking
I
at
think maybe,
over $160,000 in maintenance costs, which is pretty rich for a two-bedroom unit. And I mean, is this something we should even try to think about? Could we sell this? Because why are we landlords?
It's not up to us.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, but this is really
And
huge
Sharon
dollars.
is fairly new, and I think if she'd been here, she probably would have been visiting the CPC much sooner than now.
Yes.
Roger, have you had a chance to look at these numbers?
No, and just put it this way, but I think that one thing that we would have to do is, in terms of an estimate, we'd have to provide something more than sort of what we've got here, something that's from a contractor. So on the website, Carol and I worked last year in putting together sort of a protocol for submitting costs, and so I. Sight unseen, it's tough for me to say whether or not this is in line or it's not in line. So we offer some options in that process manual that talks about how to put together estimates, because in here you did adequately note that some of this might be subject to prevailing wage, and I can tell you with a fair amount of confidence that can change the price from 20 to 30%. And I think you guys probably would be subject to prevailing wage. I think they probably already know that. So if these costs are not based on that, then that would obviously change things. It's one of the difficult things when you're looking at sort of a residential property owned by a public entity, and now you have to do work on that. It gets not only the fact that there's a fair amount of work that needs to be done, but it gets sort of really expensive when you then have to put together a bid package, potentially put it out to bid, and have it all at prevailing wage. I tell everyone sometimes it's as difficult as, depending on the thresholds, it could be as difficult as doing a much more complex project in terms of the effort associated with doing that. But I think fundamentally we need to start with with something that's a little more substantial in terms of the estimates itself.
We have gone to we have a very extensive capital plan through the state, and so what my maintenance staff actually did contact local contractors, and that is the price for the windows and vinyl siding that we received. The other prices were pieces that we picked out of our capital plan, and we have a capital plan for Thaxter Park. It has approximately 1 million pieces in it. Every door, every window, every piece of flooring, and there is a new program that the state is using called Bid Docs with a company, and you can just punch in the things so you can get some estimates. So we have used that with my maintenance staff, and you're absolutely right. They're not exact looking into the future, but they are estimates so that the committee could have some sense of where we're headed in the next 5 years. But the
line item information to Carol?
Say that again?
Could you get the line item information to Carol?
As far as
how the 34,368, for example,
it's attached.
is broken down?
It's attached in the original application.
Let me just look for that.
They put it. The maintenance staff put together a scope, a project scope, and we had 3 local contractors contact us, and thinking. So it's called the project scope. We put that out, and
but that doesn't contain any numbers.
if you turn the page, that's the kind of information that we receive when we have put out a bid. So those are the numbers that we received from a local contractor that we had used.
Do you have an actual estimate or quote from that person in writing?
Yes, we do.
Could you
back
get
at
that
the
to
office.
Carol?
Yes, we certainly can. Yeah.
In line with what Kathleen was bringing up before, and again, we weren't on the CPC in 2006 when we acquired this. I'm just looking here at the assessment sheet in the packet in the original application, which appraises the building value at $124,900, the land value at $317,000.
Sure.
And I'm not being flippant in any way here. There's a lot of repair, renovation, replacement in this. Wouldn't we, for a reasonably comparable amount of money, construct a new modular building on this site?
I would love to see that, but this is what we have for now.
I mean, this seems.
I don't know.
I mean, is that it just seems crazy to not level this and literally build a brand new building for not much more that's going to have a much longer life. I mean, and I think the idea of a rental unit, you could build something larger. This seems like throwing good money after bad.
We'd like to put a duplex in there, actually.
We'd like to put a
so, I mean, we should
two-family, but
seriously consider that, because that might be within the purview of the CPC.
What does the will say?
I know, that's exactly
Well,
it.
the will-
That's exactly it,
The
Bob.
will
What does
gave
it
it to the
say?
town, as I
Yes.
recall, and I don't think there was,
No restrictions?
I don't believe there was. I know I still have a copy of it, because I think that was one of my warrant articles when we started this.
We bought it for
Correct.
$200,000. It wasn't given to the town.
Correct. But the will said sell it to the town.
The town says that we want
Yes.
to
Well, I mean, the town may have
back it
made
down.
I mean, the CPC, again, I wasn't on the CPC, it looks like $236,000 and a matching amount of money to purchase 4 acres and the house to forestall. I mean, this is in an area with aquifer recharge. I mean, there's important natural resources to protect in addition to this affordable unit. But if we're really considering making a significant investment in this housing stock, we should really be thinking about creating more units on the same footprint for a brand new building if we want to create affordable housing, rather than throw good money after bad here, it seems.
I think at the time it was the bird in the hand. Here was a
Sure.
occupied house.
But doesn't mean we need to do it now.
In terms of Kathleen's concern about maintenance, a lot of these are one-time, they aren't something that's going to happen every year. The 30,000 septic. But I mean, it isn't a comparable amount year after year. It's one time doing things that were overdue.
5-year period to spend $160,000 on a house that's 2 bedrooms. It's like
$236, add the 2 up, it's $400,000.
Some may be
Which is
deferrable.
going to be 100 years old at the end of the 5-year period.
Yeah.
It seems to me this is a conversation for the Housing Authority to have with the selectmen at another meeting.
Well, however, there is a family living in this house, and it is a lovely home. It's an older home, and it is a beautiful home. And it was also suggested that perhaps we talk to the Historical Commission about some monies there as well, because it is a beautiful older home that I think, it just would, it's somebody's home as well at this point that we just tear down. But I think if we protected the envelope of the home, that we do have the envelope and the roof at this point, you would have something that could be there for quite some time. Would have to displace this family, and on it would go, and then you're going to be.
Well, not necessarily, because if a new structure was built on a different footprint, especially, you've got all kinds of land there.
No. There's
Well,
a
this still
lot of
is a half
wetlands
acre, isn't
there.
it?
We're in a tight spot.
And also the septic system that's there has to be looked at. That could be quite costly.
Something that could be worked around, but
But people are living with the interior as it is.
It's fine.
It's an older house.
It's a nice.
Everything doesn't have to be new.
It has good bones, I'd say. Yeah, the maintenance staff has been in many times, and.
What would be the minimum that you could do to correct, like the leaky roof, and that while a conversation happens, to say, could this be leveled, and maybe a 2 or 3 unit, like a triplex or 3 townhouses?
I would say at minimum right now, we're talking about the windows and the vinyl siding to just protect it. The roof, we can power wash and we can patch if there's a leak, but other than that, it's just the original application that we put in for the windows and the vinyl siding, because the vinyl siding's beginning to lift. So you want to protect the envelope of the building, and the roof right now is intact. There are no issues with it. Once the maintenance staff takes good care of cutting the trees and limbs, and that will open it up so it dries it up a bit as well. And other than that,
present windows and vinyl siding are weather tight.
Pardon me?
The present windows and vinyl siding are weather tight?
No. I think the windows are original. The maintenance staff has had to go inside and do some work with some moisture infiltration, a little some leaking through the window frames, if you will. So they've corrected that.
I didn't realize
it's time.
It didn't look that bad.
I know it didn't, but the vinyl is lifting. It's definitely far surpassed its useful life. And the maintenance staff is willing to go out and do prep work and do whatever else they need to do, but it's beyond patching at this point. So if they did that, you're going to gain quite a bit of time to, once you do that.
Before the December 3rd meeting, go back to the 2006 annual town meeting, and then the original will, because I kind of remember some stuff in there that there were. I think the only restriction was that it be affordable. I think.
And maintain control over the time.
Yep.
Roger, could you take a personal look at this before the December 3rd meeting, and perhaps give us a report at that meeting on, what you think is the best use of town dollars here? Should we really be doing something as a stopgap measure on this house, or should we go forward with something else? And of course, CPC dollars can be used for the creation of new affordable housing. So it might be a better proposal to us to come back.
To us too, if we get a duplex out of that, would be much better.
Sure.
I remember one of the other issues is the road coming in there, but maybe if you do it with affordable units, then it's not as much of a problem.
They're not complaining. I mean, they have to ride that road all the time. They love it.
It's charming and quaint.
Any other questions or comments?
Good idea.
Members of the public? Ted, did you have a?
If I could.
Sure.
Good evening, Ted Joyce from 10 Hobart Street in Hingham. I'm actually here in capacity as the liaison from the advisory committee, one of the liaisons, but I'm actually speaking as just a fellow citizen. I think I really want to kind of just back up what the vice chair mentioned in regards to kind of other ways to utilize the funds. I think it's really an interesting proposal, especially if we look at, as Catherine was mentioning, the monies we're spending on this property, and wanting to be duly respectful also of our fellow citizens and folks that are living in the home now. I think, maybe you give up some of it's an old building, it's a beautiful home, old outside, whatever it is. I haven't seen the property, but it just seems to me that there could be so much more gained by utilizing those funds, whether it's modular homes that are quite beautiful. I'm not going to go down the road of saying a tiny home. I don't know if you've never seen one of those, but you can really get something for a fraction of the cost. And I think something that would really put us in a position of being able to maximize the return on some of these funds. So I just want to kind of echo the sentiments that I think are being brought forward by the committee. Thank you.
Can we put in a modified application this year? Should be a duplex?
I think that's maybe we should just recommend it, go back and just maybe we can meet and talk about some options and try to see what sort of a sort of cost benefit on some of the different options, and then be able to report back on that. That's what I would recommend.
In the last 2 years and this year, and we're going to be even more strict next year, to try to identify everything almost at the preliminary application stage, which is going to be mandatory next year, and then have people meet with project managers or with staff or with the vice chair or myself before the final application goes in. I mean, and it seems to me there are probably going to be questions with maturity with respect to a proposal for modular homes this year, because it's probably going to take more planning and more input from other town boards than our recommendation cycle is going to permit us to adequately vet before town meeting.
CPC funds also could be a repository. So if we went in and we started getting it together, did what we could, by springtime, I could assure you we would have some very good costs and we would be well on our way with a feasibility study and those kinds of things. So if we could think about what we may have dollar-wise to work with, you're talking probably, a year and a half from now. But I think if we could go in with a modified application once we meet, after we have those conversations, and if we had some idea of some source of funding to move forward with it.
I mean, we're going to have to set aside $114,000 roughly into the housing reserve, in addition to the $77,000 carryover. So there will be, if we do nothing else, there will be $220,000 in the housing reserve next year, with another 100 and whatever next year that we have to set aside. Does
the Affordable Housing Trust provide a flexible way of addressing this, or is that only for properties that are going to be resold?
I think the problem is the Housing Authority property is different from the Housing Trust property.
Okay.
I don't know about this one because this is kind of a hybrid, where it's a rental that was bought with CPC money. It's a one of a kind. So I don't know the answer to
doing the home ownership, affordable home ownerships. They tend to do that. And so the Housing Authority does the rentals, and so there's really a need for that.
A good chunk of time working with Roger and some of the boards trying to figure out if we can. The modular home is a great idea, especially if we can get 2 or 3 units out of it. Sure. But being so close to conservation land, I think it's going to take you several months to kind of figure out, can we do this? So I think you should concentrate on what do we need and what kind of money to make the house fix what needs to be fixed so it doesn't deteriorate anymore. Yeah. You've got a great start at a 5-year plan, and then maybe jump over that and say, is there a better use of the money?
Well, Sharon, I thought, and I'm not sure at all, that the parcel was long and that there was room there for another structure.
There is behind it.
Behind it, on buildable ground? Yeah. So we could do something like the new structure people are talking about, and keep this for the duration of its life.
Doing that on Lozelle Street, that old house they fixed in the building, one right behind it, and keeping the house like that.
I think we need to address immediate concerns, but I think if you really got started with a good checklist on all the different things you need to do to get to the point where you could come to us in late August with a proposal about a duplex or a triplex, whatever is possible, in conjunction with approvals by other town boards, you might be getting a threefer.
Maybe look at this in terms of what would you do if you lived there? You would do the roof. You wouldn't necessarily redo the kitchen. You can live with the kitchen.
We can't fund the kitchen anyway.
They can't do that. We would do that.
I'm just saying a lot of these things.
We put a kitchen in for it. It's just a
Yeah.
very good kitchen.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay, any further comment from? I think we're all set then. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Productive conversation. Mr. McGrail.
Bob, what were you saying? Never mind.
Hello.
Welcome. Hope you're feeling better.
Thank you. Thank you for switching from last week. I appreciate it.
Could you just introduce yourself for our viewing audience?
Yeah, my name's Bill. You want to sit with me up here? No. My name's James McGrail. I'm the Director of Operations at South Shore Country Club.
And I'm William Friend. I'm on the chairman of the CCMC committee.
All right. Yeah, well, thank you guys for having us here tonight. We're here to talk about the tennis courts at the South Shore Country Club. I don't have a per se, in-depth report to tell you about, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of history on them, and then talk about where we're at with them and what we'd like to do. So since I've been an employee of the town for about 8 years, and since I've worked at the country club, the tennis courts have always kind of been something that we talked about, but never really knew what to do with. We've had a number of different operators that we've hired on a year-to-year basis that have run tennis programs, tennis lessons for kids in the summertime. We've done 2 independent ones, and then we currently have the South Shore YMCA that runs the tennis program for us. And basically what we ask of them is that they offer tennis lessons to kids in town, to Hingham residents and non-residents, and that they would pay us a small fee for the use of the courts to do that. We've got anywhere on an annual basis from $1,000 to $3,000. And last year, what we did is, rather than even get a payment from the South Shore YMCA, we asked that they put the $3,000 into fixing up, into buying a windscreen, basically, that back into the courts. So we bought a windscreen that helps protect the courts and keep the wind out of it when you're playing. But what we haven't done is been able to invest in the courts, in those 8 years that I've been there, and they've deteriorated. What the courts are used for primarily is those lessons, and those lessons run from in, say, June, July, and August, and really a little bit in September, but not too much. And then primarily outside of that, they're used for public access to residents in the town. And we have quite a few programs that use them, and not in conjunction with the country club. We allow them to use them. We have a senior group that plays tennis there in the afternoons. We have a few other pickup matches that take place, but the SNAP program in Hingham used them this past summer for one of their summer camp activities. Hingham Youth Tennis created a tennis ladder that they used the courts in conjunction with other courts in town. And we use them also for when we have like corporate outings and stuff at the club. Like, we'll let them use the tennis courts, but primarily they're just public, open access tennis courts. So our battle has been in the last number of years is how do we handle the tennis courts? What do we do going forward? And it's been a struggle with us. So the way that we fund capital, I know when I talked to Vicki, there was some questions about how come the country club doesn't fund, this project going forward. So the way that we fund capital at the club is I produce a 5-year capital plan, and I go in front of capital outlay, one of the committees on the town here, on an annual basis, and go through that plan and put together the amount of money that we have that we're asking for capital. And then we fund different than most of the other town departments. We fund that capital out of our operating costs. So we're their favorite group to see, because we're not asking for money. We're just telling them what we want to do. We fund it out of operating. So, and we do invest about $100,000 a year back into the facility, give or take, some years less, some years a little bit more. And what we typically, pinpoint and fund are projects that are revenue generating funds. Like we redid the bowling alley a few years ago. We built an indoor golf simulator lounge, areas where we can pinpoint potential revenue and direct our capital funds to that. On top of that, there's infrastructure stuff that comes up. Last year, we invested in a sewer project that we had to deal with. We invest in the golf course and bunker renovation. But every dollar, the limited money that we have comes from us out of our operating budget, and we put it into either revenue-generating areas or areas that are critical to our infrastructure, like our sewer. So the tennis courts, every year we've been talking about them, and it keeps coming up of what are we, how are we going to handle the tennis courts going forward? It brings me back to how I first started, and we think we have a plan in place here moving forward that we think will be able to give us a time frame of the next few years to see if we can generate some serious revenue out of the tennis courts, that we would be able to come up with some sort of long-term solution to the tennis courts. And that's in a partnership with the rec department to kind of grow the courts, to grow usage on the courts to more than just those few months where we have children taking tennis lessons in the summertime, to more adult programming where we can incorporate. We've had a lot of success in golf where we have adult golf lessons and then we have cocktails and hors d'oeuvres after the lesson, and take that type of model and put it into tennis with the help of the rec department, and see if in the next few years we can kind of start making better revenue that could actually fund us to long-term address the situation of the courts. So what we'd like to do now, and what we're asking for help with, is take the courts in the condition that they're at. You guys all came and looked at them with me, and basically do a process that Roger had success with at the high school courts, where they clean out the cracks, put an overlay over the crack, and then resurface the entire courts, new nets, new posts, paint lines, and start from scratch basically, and also fix keep the structure of the fence in place, but replace the netting of the fence, and do some landscaping around to try to clean up the look of it. I've worked with Roger to talk to a few different vendors. Roger and I met with a number of vendors, but we actually got a quote from one of them in Vermont that he used at the high school courts, and they came up with this proposal. The plan would be to do this coming early summer. As soon as right after town meeting, we'd issue an RFP to be able to do this work, in the hopes that we'd be able to be open July 1st to have the SNAP program back at the club, and then start from there with the rec department to try to grow our program. An example of why the tennis courts at the club work really well as compared to other town courts is the facility that we have. There's no other town courts where you can have dinner while your spouse is playing tennis. We have restrooms. There's no town courts currently that, other than here, where you can go to the bathroom. I know Lisa's here from Hingham Youth Tennis. She runs tennis programs all over town and has to shuttle kids to her house to use the bathroom. We have facilities. It's a nice thing that we have. In an example, I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with the SNAP program and what they do, but what we did last year up at the club, which was a new program, is we ran a summer camp for these special needs children, and they came 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock, and they stayed till 4, and they were in groups of 3, and they played tennis, and then they played golf on the indoor golf simulators, and then they bowled, and they rotated through. And the reason that was appealing to them is because we had all those things. If you take tennis out of it, it just doesn't work as well. It's one more thing that we have that we can offer. To us, the tennis courts, because they're open to the public and we don't really capture a lot of revenue there, we see them as an asset to the town. And although they're an asset to us, we just don't really know how to. We need some help with how to deal with them in the short term, so that we can figure out a long-term solution. I wrote this sentence in the application, and I was reading it over it tonight, and I just wanted to reiterate it because I think it kind of, it really captures what I'm trying to say. is although it may not make business sense for the South Shore Country Club to invest in these courts, we think it makes sense for the town because these courts allow residents and groups such as SNAP and Hingham Youth Tennis to use the courts in conjunction with other recreational opportunities that we do have at the club, which cannot be done at any other courts in town. So it really makes these courts unique in Hingham, and we hope that you guys see it the same way. So that's really all I have. Answer any questions that you guys have about it.
As the project manager, I'd just like to add, having looked at the tennis courts recently, as we all did, I mean, one of the reasons these courts aren't used more is they absolutely can't be used. And as someone who's lived in Hingham a long time and was here when we purchased the South Shore Country Club, tennis courts are part of a country club. I can't imagine a country club without tennis courts. So the need to get these courts up and running so that people can start using them and promoting them as we will work with a partnership with the rec, I think we can bring a lot of excitement back to these tennis courts with all the other assets the country club has. So hopefully this committee will make the decision. This is a fix that will give a good 10 years to figuring, because there are a lot of structural issues at a place of South Shore Country Club. So clearly they're doing everything they can with most of the needs and investment. But this is something that should be something this committee can take care of.
To Anna and to Vicki, and that was a great presentation. It's key to the SNAP summer camp program to fix these tennis courts. And just as you said, Jay, the cycling through, it's a real camp. And these children don't have anything like this any other place. And because it's a very nice, safe environment that you provide, all the facilities are there. And I agree with Vicki. I think if these are fixed, and with the work with the Rec Commission, I think you'll see a real growth in the tennis program. So I think it's a super use of CPC money.
Yeah, and we use the courts, like, for example, with that program as like the check-in drop-off for the program. So because it's an enclosed area, fenced in, the parents are able to come in, check in at the table, drop their kids off, and feel like they're not just leaving them in a random parking lot somewhere. And, it works with the flow. It's a really good program. I can't say that the kids, when it's 100 degrees, loved that. They liked the air conditioning in the golf simulators, but it gets them outside. So it's a good. It's a part of our club for sure. It's a part of our club, but we just we have such limited capital that we can afford, and to be able to put it into this is it would take away from something that could potentially generate make or break us from a financial standpoint for the year.
Other questions or comments? Members of the public? Warren?
Warren Palacier still at 147 Main Street. I think I mentioned earlier that I was lucky enough to be the president of HSP while we were running the various, helping the various sports and covering the things that the various organizations couldn't afford. My son was the captain. Was not the captain. He was a junior, and it was announced that he became captain of the tennis team at the high school. So we were very, very excited about that. And we learned that same night that the Hingham High School tennis courts were going to be officially shut down. So along with the good news came the bad news. Well, the good news is that Hingham Sports Partnership, as well as tennis and track, got together and provided a grant to study the tennis courts and the track. And really through Roger, I think Roger did an awful lot of work understanding what needed to be done. We thought we were going to have to spend $250,000 on the tennis courts to have them redone. Really found a fantastic way of fixing those tennis courts beautifully and having them used the following year. Unfortunately, my son had graduated. Luckily, I've got another one that came right up and started to play tennis again. So I want to tell you that his solution worked and worked beautifully for the tennis courts. Secondly, about the SNAP program that Jay had mentioned earlier. You know, one of the unfortunate things that these kids have to go through is, while we're all enjoying the month of July, these kids are going to school. So they go to school from 9 to 12 in the morning in the month of July. And their parents have to figure out, well, what am I going to do for the rest of the day? So we put together, in conjunction with Jay and with Bill, a program that allowed them to be dropped off at the tennis courts at South Shore Country Club. We also partnered with the Greenside Grill, so if you wanted to order a lunch for your child when he was there, you could order a lunch for your child and sit there and have lunch with them. We also were the second largest hiring force of our high school kids, only behind the rec center. So we hired 32 kids that mentored each one of the kids, the special needs kids in the program. Kept them busy for the entire summer. The tennis courts and the way that everything worked from a flow perspective is that the kids get tired of a certain sport when they're in it for a certain point of time, and we've just got the right mix of about 45 minutes going from sport to sport to sport. And then the parents know where to drop their kids off and pick their kids back up again. It was just a perfect relationship for us, and I don't see another venue that we could ever possibly do that. The partnership that we've had with South Shore has been fantastic. The tennis courts are miserable, unfortunately. They need to be fixed, and I just don't want to get to the same point where my son got to, that you're just not going to allow people to play on them anymore. So again, thank you.
Questions, comments? Members of the public? Roger?
When you begin to consider this project, the tennis courts themselves are sort of right on the cusp of that's life cycle, where we can, if you another 2 or 3 years, and you're definitely talking about reconstruction, and now you're into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and here I think we're talking about $55,000. It's basically pavement that's painted with some other amenities associated with that, and it behaves the same way. When we get past a certain point, this application doesn't work anymore. So I just from chronology, I just want to let you know that that's kind of what you're looking at with respect to this project. Yeah.
Anything further?
I'd like to add one thing. I kind of reiterate what Jay has said and other people have said. These are an asset of the town, and if we don't, we've got an opportunity here to protect it and rehabilitate it. If we don't, they're going to deteriorate and go away. So I think I hope you agree that it's a smart investment for the town.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Good night. Few more. I know it's late. We've got a few more items of committee business that I'll try to get through quickly. If you take a look at your folders.
Thank you, Carol. I don't know what we would do without you with these folders.
Carol's given us a breakdown of the CPA administration budget, and it looks like we can get down to about an ask of $45,000, and maybe sharpen our pencils more when we get towards the
45 or 35?
Is it 35? All right, look at the bottom line.
Is that
35.
all?
35.
That's all
yes.
you need?
Yep.
Are you sure?
That's why I have these people to double check me.
Yeah. Can you
no.
triple check? I would have thought we would have
No.
gone up a little. No.
We've got a carryover amount, and we actually
Okay.
put in a contingency of, I think, $7,500. So we built in some cushion. We think we can live with $35,000.
On the master plan, I worked with folks in the library, and they've reduced their amount by $10,000.
I saw that. Good. And The next thing in your folders, I think, is an email that I sent to Stuart Saginaw at the CPA Coalition about the Lincoln School project, and about whether the cost of rehousing the people to make the project possible is something that can be done with CPA funds. I looked at the statute and I looked at the CPA Coalition's project list, and I didn't find an answer. So depending on what Stuart says, and we might ultimately be asking town council, it might actually be a question of first impression, as they say in legal circles, about whether we could do that. On the Affordable Housing Trust, first I need to correct the record. I think I gave the impression to people that the selectmen's parcel had not been included in the application, and that's because I was looking at the preliminary application. There is some mention of the selectmen's parcel in the final application. They did provide us, per our request, with a breakdown of the expenditures from opportunity funding on 4 Beals Cove Road, which is in your folder. And they provided us with a breakdown of the spending on the selectmen's parcel, which has been a very nominal amount out of the $175,000. So I suspect that the selectmen's parcel probably is not going to play a major role in our deliberations this year, but I just wanted to note that for everyone. We did a little look at the Mullen Rule in terms of attendance at CPC meetings, and I've included in the people's folders a Community Development Department form that is used on other committees of the town concerning the Mullen Rule. The Mullen Rule, in a nutshell, is if you haven't adequately participated in the debate about a project on which an adjudication is being made, that you don't get to vote on it. Susan Murphy did observe to me that she didn't think we were really an adjudicatory board because we are making recommendations to town meeting, and the town meeting is really making the adjudication. However, I do think perhaps we make adjudications with respect to determining whether a project is qualified or not. So to the extent that we are voting to rule out somebody as being applicable, I think that probably we are making an adjudicatory decision. Bottom line is attendance and kind of keeping up with the proceedings is important, which I have no complaint about. I think everybody on this committee is great. And with HCAM, it's easy if you have a night off to catch up. Carol's included the screening worksheet as friendly advice to project managers. I have been in touch with Susan Murphy about historic preservation restrictions on the lodge and on the Girl Scout house, and those are moving forward. And one last item. I've also been in touch with the folks at the Heritage Museum at the Historical Society about that project moving forward. They are expecting to get bids from multiple contractors in January. They are hoping to start construction this spring, probably late March or April. I have given Ted a heads up on this in terms of the bond issue. I have asked Ted for input as to how much we need to set aside for potential bond payments through, it would actually be June 30th of 2016 to include the next funding payment cycle. And I think we'd probably want to have more cushion rather than less cushion in any event. I've also asked Ted to provide us with information on different bonding approaches, where we have $146,000 already set aside, and if we put another $110,000, we're $250,000 down the road to paying off a $1.1 million bond issue, and we may want to think about whether we want to accelerate the repayment or not. So, and I should ask if people want to put any other items on the agenda for December 3rd. I think Kathleen brought up earlier that it would be good for us to discuss as a committee our criteria for making recommendations, and before we get to an ultimate meeting on making those recommendations, I think it would be good to have that discussion. So, Carol, if you could put that on the agenda for December 3rd, that would be great. Is there anything else that people would like to see on that agenda? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Excellent.
Wash your way to the door.